help us control the door during the round.
The
The door.
why is it?
Like just to make sure people aren't coming in during speeches.
Ah, okay. I will inform the staff about this.
Okay, thank you. So like, yeah, every time someone goes down again.
Yeah, I
Thank you,
know.
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for setting up the street.
Yeah, I just need.
Member Gov, when Member Gov goes out, they move to the back.
I think it's the back already.
I think they want to see it.
Well,
I think they want to see it.
okay.
I think it's fine.
Open finalists, open grand finalists. By member of government at the EFL final, please move to the back of the room because we'll have to announce your motion and positions outside. So by member of gov, move to the back.
Once my phone is in case any two of us are on the seconds.
Should I ask Kim for consent?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Put it outside and you walk in. Never mind.
That's okay.
Let's do it one by one. Yeah. You want to do no, the chair for it?
Yeah.
Do you guys need me? Is there a problem? No.
Should be okay. Is there a mic though?
Yeah, I already gave out the mic.
Hello? Hello? 1, 2, 3. Mic test, 1, 2, 3. I think you can turn up the volume a bit. Hello? 1, 2, 3. Hello, mic test, 1, 2, 3. Hello. See, am I audible?
Jeremy, you guys started with just mic.
Yeah. But I just need to announce that they have to be very quiet because right now they're very loud. Okay.
Guys, listen up. The mic system is having problem. We are going to use at most one mic. If not, it won't be a mic. So we need to be very quiet for the final to happen. Ken? Thank you.
Alright, welcome everyone to the EFL Grand Finals of Krabi ABP 2024. Let us start from the introduction of the teams. On opening government, we have BFSU, Yang, and Han. On opening opposition, we have KO, Soh Ha, and dismissed. On closing government, we have Freeland. On closing opposition, we have Tokyo, Karitani, and Saito. Alright, my name is Song Hyun. I'll be the chair for this final. Can we also do a round of panel introduction? Sorry.
Leo, all the best.
August, all the best.
My name's Ali. Good luck.
Chengzu, all the best.
Good luck.
Chang, all the best.
Alright, under the motion, this house prefers the norm of matrilocal marriages over neolocal marriages. We invite the Prime Minister. Here, here.
Before dealing with my speech, I want to say some thank you words. I haven't written it yet. But first of all, I want to say my sincerest gratitude towards all our Chinese friends and debaters who traveled all the long way to Krabi to complete these years of ABP. It's a really fantastic journey for me. It actually is my first international major. And second of all, but the most important thing is that we're coming from Beijing Foreign Studies University, English Debating Society. It generally is definitely one of the best English debating societies in the mainland China. It has changed my life in many unexpected ways. Although none of our school members are on the occasion, they are with us wholeheartedly. Without further ado, I'm going to deal with my speech. Three categorizations about the matrilocal marriage law. Number one, after getting married, the couple would reside with the wife's parents, moving to the wife's parents' house, for example. Second, this is the norm. This means two things. First of all, the whole society encourages all the families to do so. And second, it's deeply rooted in the society and it's factually changing people's residence models. That means in factual, we actually have more people following this norm, putting them into practice. And thirdly, this norm also emphasizes on the distribution of child rearing between both the man's family and wife's family. For example, women's family will be in charge of taking care of the children. However, the man's family will also be in charge of, for example, providing the financial aid for the child rearing. So this is still an equal mode. But moving on, neolocal mode actually looks like the couple would, for example, buy or rent a new residential place after they get married, moving to a new place, and move away from the original natal relatives from their family, and start up a separate home away from their own relatives, such as parents' back. But moving on, we think the modern relationship claims to have equality for both sides of the relationship. However, in fact, this is not equal. In the status quo, female members of the female spouses of the relationship are disproportionately responsible for both the child rearing and the bread earning procedures in lots of modern societies. When the newly married couples have their own family, the most likely case is that male have more power because of the better financial status, whereas women have to take the unequal division of labor. They have double responsibility in terms of which, first of all, they have to rear the child because they are the mom. Secondly, they have to also work because the income is really limited. So what we want to tell you is actually three things in this debate. First of all, this unequal division, disproportionately torturing women, is more likely to be changed in our matrilocal mode. Second of all, even if we cannot make the thorough changes, at least the matrilocal mode can protect the women spouses in a relationship better marginally. And thirdly, the last practical financial eases will also be proven to you, like why the newly married couples will have less financial burdens following our law, actually. Then, why do we think there will be more independence for women in terms of financial status, especially in outside the house? Look, the status quo looks like the women today are still stuck in a domestic sphere for two reasons. First of all, the social norm tells them that you have to raise the kid because the kids naturally have better relationship with the moms. But this norm happens actually for structural reasons because you have to have one member at home to take after the kids. But in most of the separate homes, this means that the women are likely to take the kid instead of the husband. But if we can have more parents at the the mom's family to take care of the kids, there will be more room for the mother to go to work and have more promotional opportunities. And secondly, when working mothers actually at work, they have fewer chances of promotion. For example, when the whole HR department is sifting out your CV, if you are having the identity of being a mom, you're more likely to be denied for job opportunity or a lot of promotional chances for a lot of structural reasons we have all familiar with. Therefore, in outside the house, the labor of raising a kid is actually partially outsourced to the parents. This is likely to be true for three reasons. Number one, the grandparents, usually after the retirement, they have better time and energy to raise up the kids. And number two, most of the grandparents, they love the daughters, right? We do not talk about extreme conditions in which daughters are not loved at all. But for this genealogical relationship between wife's parents and wives, grandparents are more likely to have incentive to help the daughters to take care of the kids. And thirdly, those grandparents will see that the higher income for both, let's say, the double earning family is actually a good thing for better child rearing. For example, better educational opportunities for their children. So they'll be more willing and happy to do that. The impact is really simple. The women have fewer burdens in the family because they outsource some of the responsibilities to the wife's parents. But note here, this is not to say that women's families are still disproportionately taking the responsibility of child rearing. Because in outside of the house, the man's family are still likely to take the burden of, for example, financial aid towards child rearing. This is still likely to be an equal distribution. That this further brings more opportunities in work, especially for women's spouses. This looks like, number one, we have more promotional chances if you can have more time and energy put into work. And secondly, we have more equal positions in the family compared with the husband if the wife has actually generally the same amount of income as the husband, right? But moving on, even if you do not buy that piece of argument, we can still say that we can still protect generally better protection of the female spouses, even if females are still denied for a lot of opportunities in work in outside the house. Why is that true? The general reason is that wives' parents have more incentive to protect the daughters. These look like two things. First of all, the daughters have a really strong genealogical advantages with their parents. All the parents love the daughters, as this is the most normalized cases, right? So this secondly means that we have more checks and balances from the women's families in terms of taking after the women from being harmed or family violence from the parents, right? From the husbands. If the opposition tries to say that, okay, in the poorest areas, wives are still harmed by the toxic family norms anyway, we think this is not any debate, right? Because in extreme conditions that torture women, both of the norms in the debate are likely to harm the female members anyway. But we are only talking about the vast majority of women who are suffering from the invisible discrimination and unequal distribution of labor in the society, right? So in this regard, even if we cannot change the distribution thoroughly, we can still protect the women better from the family violence. Note here, this is really important. Unequal distribution of labor is the hotbed for a lot of family violence to happen. If we cannot prevent the unequal financial status from being eradicated, we can at least prove to you that when the whole family is moving towards the women's house, it's actually more likely for the women to get protected directly by the check and balances systems from the women's families, right? But why is this unlikely opposition side of the house? The general reason is that in the new local home mode, it's unlikely for two reasons. Number one, women are unlikely to have real close contact with the parents. This means whenever the emergency happens, such as family violence, it costs them more energy and time to get some help from the family. And secondly, when women are away from family, this daily check and balance system from the parents upon the behaviors of the husband is totally absent. These are all the possible hotbeds for a lot of family violence. And finally, if it's not by this kind of bigger societal changes, we can still provide you with fewer financial, we can still provide you with Practical benefits, that is the fewer financial burdens on the newly married couples. Note here, starting up a family, or especially a separated home, means extra large cost. This looks like, for example, you have to rent or buy a new home, which means a lot of burdens for a newly married couple. And second, you raise a child together, all the burdens are upon yourself. This is really important. If we outsource the cost of buying a house or renting a house to the families, and also getting the financial aid from the both families, it means fewer financial burdens for the newly started couples. This is really important, especially during the recession of the economy. The couples need to have better conditions for taking care of the children and looking after each other. Based on that, proud to propose.
I thank the Prime Minister for their speech. Now I invite the Leader of Opposition.
If you have POIs, please just stand up. I'll try to take them closing. Two arguments from OO. Firstly, why there's better relationships on our side. Secondly, why there's more self-actualization for all members involved. Why are we going to win this debate? Firstly, we're going to win against OG because of the number of people we can save on our side. They can only help women in sexist households. We're going to tell you that this doesn't change anyways, but we all protect all members, including parents, families, both husband and wife. Secondly, we win in terms of certainty. I think better relationships that we're going to explain exist in all contexts, whereas government can only claim their benefits in sexist households. Next, talking about why sexism doesn't change on either side. I think if we take the characterization of OG that there's like sexist, structural sexism in all like forms of life, that we take that like everyone believes that this sexism is good in the first place. I think on either side, these families are going to pressure their wives to stay home. I think on either side, if you live with your wife's parents, your mother is going to say, oh, even if you're being abused, that is fine because that is the norm. Even if you're being discriminated in work, that is fine because that is the norm. I think they're actually going to pressure you more to stay home since you live with more conservative people in your household. On our side, at least you can stay away from parents who are more likely to be conservative. Okay. First argument, why there's more relationship problems in government paradigm, why it's better on our side. I think a good, long-lasting marriage and relationship is determined by how you resolve conflicts. Even if you have a happy marriage, even if you have more resources, if you cannot solve your conflicts, it probably means that it's not sustainable, it probably means that you're going to be divorced and be unhappy. Firstly, I think there's an imbalance of power more on government side. I think the wife, as government says, relies on their parents more for emotional support, for like resources and stuff like that. I think in that situation, the husband just cannot feel like they can speak up. I think they feel indebted because they're under their house, they're using their resources and stuff like that. I think that is the point when they cannot speak up, even if there is a small problem, and I think that leads to less sustainable relationships because you cannot talk about the problems when they happen, if they blow up in your face later on. On opposition, comparatively, you can easily speak up because of equal partnership, right? I'll be telling you why there's more equal partnerships on our side, but it's likely that the problems surface earlier on and there's likely to be faster discussions on our side because no one feels like they're indebted to the house, indebted to the rules, indebted to all the resources that the family is getting. Secondly, there are more people involved in this fight on government side that leads to more instability, right? On government, the wise family likely enters the conflicts as they explain. It's likely that they're going to talk about how you should spend your household expenses, or where you spend your money, or how you raise your children. It's likely that they enter the discussions, therefore there's going to be more instability and more things that you have to consider, which leads to longer and prolonged conflict. Note, your parents are likely to have very different values from what you have because they tend to live in a time that you didn't live in, more conservative values. It's likely that they're going to tell you the husband should provide or the wife should stay at home and stuff like that. On our side, there's only two people involved in conflict, therefore you can solve it easily because there's less people involved, there's less values involved, there's less conflicts that you just have to solve, therefore there's better relationships on our side. The impact here. I think firstly, problems are likely to arise earlier and discussed earlier. Why is this important? Firstly, because this is important because it's crucial for a sustainable relationship, right? On government side, these problems just blow up in your face later on when the husband cannot take it anymore. On our side, you're likely to be able to speak up more, therefore solve these relationship problems earlier. Secondly, you're able to solve conflicts better on our side because there's just less people involved, less values involved, therefore you can discuss in a faster and clearer manner. Next, going on to how there's more flexibility in life, there's more self-actualization for all. I think there's less flexibility for the husband and the wife in that household, right? This is because you have to live in your parents' house. There's two restrictions here. Firstly, geographic restriction. If your wife's family lives in a rural area, even if your job is in the city, you have to move there and live with them, which is a just overall large restriction on your life. But secondly, there's restrictions on time, right? You have to actively communicate with the family members in order to keep a nice, a good, communicative household. You probably have to spend all this time talking about where your child is or what you're doing that day, which is a lot of time spent on things that you could do use better on our side. What happens on our side? You're more likely to be able to choose where to work, where to live, how to raise your child. You can spend all this time you have discussing with your family on things that make you happy. I think you're not restricted by your family's, by the wife's parents. Therefore, I think you just get more self-actualization, more happiness on our side. Why is this important? We believe this is important because where you live, what jobs you have, directly affect the quality of life. Even if you have a dream to be an independent woman in the city, because your parents live in the rural areas, you have to go there and work. Even if the husband wants to play, travel a lot, you can't do that because you have to live with your parents' life because you have to consider the schedule of everyone involved in your household. Secondly, we believe there's less flexibility for the parents as well, right? This is firstly in terms of resources. Probably, as government said, they're going to spend a lot of time and resources on helping the family, on raising their child and stuff like that. It's likely that this money can be spent on our side on retiring faster, or spending on just things that make them happy, or things being able to rest in general. I think these restrictions are probably going to exist more on their side to help parents better because they're less stressed, just have more time on their hands, and there's less restrictions on resources. Okay. Next, going on to why it's likely to be more equal on our side. I think, never mind. We're very proud to oppose.
I think the leader of opposition is further speech. Now I invite the Deputy Prime Minister.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1 now. The biggest problem with opening opposition is that they never prove the premise of their case, which is when there is an equal relationship between the male and woman, can there be the real relationship, the better relationship that they want to talk about? If you look at the status quo, you can always see that a lot of husbands are actually abusing their wife, and a lot of husbands actually never listen to the wife's need. And this actually give a lot of obstacles to the good relationship at the first place. And even if we take their best case, which is they actually have good relationship, we still win on vulnerability. In their side of house, those families who can have good relationship are those in which the men are well educated is without the toxic masculinity. That's the premise of the good relationship at their first place. But these type of family are not vulnerable at their first place. Later in my speech, I'm going to tell you why in our side of the house we can actually better help those most vulnerable family at their first place. Second, they actually try to talk about the self-actualization. In our side of the house, we are going to tell you two things. First, why actually money is very important for the self-actualization, and why in our side of the house we achieve it better. And second, why especially we make it true for women, which are more vulnerable in our side of the house in the reality. Two things in my speech. First, I'm going to tell you why structurally we can actually change the inequality between male and women in the labor division, and secondly, why it's actually better as a whole. First, when in our side of the house, what does the family rule actually actually look like? We believe that the family role is a very important characterization, which can actually tell you, explain to you what is the real family norm in the society, right? So first, in our set of house, what does things look like? It looks like they are going to be more independent and jobs for women for 3 reasons. First, we believe that when there are parents to take care of the children, you actually don't need women at their first place. But second, in order to sustain the bigger family, for example, if you also have to sustain your wife's parents, of course you need more people to work. If there's only men who are working, of course the money is not enough. So for the majority of the family, you still need more people in the family to work at their first place. But third, we believe that in our side of the house, women are also willing to work for 2 reasons. First, they also have pressure asking the husband to buy everything for the family, to take care of everything for the family. But second, if actually the family pressure for men are so huge, then of course a lot of men are not willing to get married. Then the norm will not be stabilized in our society. These analyses tell you that in our side of the house, the family role are more likely to look like, for example, the couple is going to work while the wife's parents are going to take care of the family, while the husband's parents are also likely to give financial support because everyone in the family needs to take some responsibility to give back to the family. Why is likely? 2 reasons. First, because we actually have to stabilize the family. We cannot ask some to actually to contribute to the family, while some don't. But second, we also want to, because the society also want to make the family function better, and everyone needs to contribute. So there are already social narrative or norm that asking you to do so. In all positions of the house, the family role is more likely to look like, first, the husband is going to work, while the wife are going to take care more of the household things, because in their side of the house, in order to take care of the child, they need someone without the parents' help. Who can that be, right? For a lot of people, they don't have the money to hire someone to take care of their children at their first place. This is the real comparative, and this means that we actually structurally prove why we changed the sexism problem fundamentally in our side of the house, and why is this very important for women. 3 reasons. In our side of the house, this looks like more women are likely to get a job, and this means 5 things. First, it's more likely for women in our side of the house to receive education in the very first place, especially in the long run, because education is the premise of finding a job at the very first place. And we think education is very important for women because it's the place where you can actually cultivate your critical thinking ability, and you are exposed to more progressive ideas. For example, you should not be abused by your husband, and when you face risks like this, you should actively vote it out. But second, it also means that there are more bargaining power for the women with the husband, because you have the money, you can decide what you want. But thirdly, it also means that women are going to have more choices. They're actually holding their future in their own hands. They can choose whether they want to get married or not. But fourthly, it also fundamentally prevents traditional harmful masculinity from happening at their first place. Because in our side of the house, the narrative looks like everyone in the family, in the couple, should work at their first place. Everyone should take the responsibility. But in their side of the house, when man is the only one who work in their side of the house, that's the moment when harmful masculinity happens, because it tells men that you need to be the top leader in your family. But in our side of the house, this is not happening. No, we think this is also very important because it means that we reduce a lot of problem coming from harmful masculinity at their first place. We also give more room for the feminism group to actually advocate or to help the women, and because we give them a norm that they can resort to. But fifthly, we think it's also very important because when women are receiving education or are actually working, they can actually get more friends. We say friends is also very important because in their side of the house, because friends are the one who can actually accompany them and actually can provide them better mental support when, for example, they are really suffering from the husband abuse and things like that. We say this is also very important and something important for women as well. And then we are going to tell you why actually in our side of the house, those parents can also live harmoniously and have effective communication between family members. And this is also a direct engagement with open opposition. I'm going to take Chloe.
If you want to outsource your labor, why can't you live with the husband's family so that women can actively detach from the role of taking care of the household?
So what we mean by family role is that we actually, so in our side of the house, we have already proved to you that the family role is likely to happen at their first place. So I think I have already answered to your question now. So next, why in our side of the house, why in our house they can still live harmoniously and effective communication can still happen. So first, we believe that they are already the norm, right? Meaning that there are implicit social rule, a family rule, and everyone is likely to obey it at their first place because it is what everyone is doing. But secondly, we think every family member also have incentive to reduce conflicts. In our house, conflicts are less likely to happen fundamentally because in our house, we prove to you more people, more women are likely to receive education at their first place. And a lot of conflicts arise because of the different concepts that they have about life. But in our house, when more people have education, this difference is likely to be reduced at their first place. Finally, winning. Why we win? Firstly, we win our vulnerability. We prove to you why we fundamentally protect a lot of women, why we fundamentally change the division of labor and make sure that more women have the right to lead. But second, we also win on skill, right? We have protect a lot of women, especially those most vulnerable ones, and all the child that they give birth to, and all the family members they have. All of these reasons very protocols.
Thank you to the three Prime Ministers for their speech. Now I invite the three leader of opposition. Here.
Before I forget, I wanted to give a big thank you to everyone first in the Japan debate community. I think I am very lucky to be in such a warm community. I also want to give a shout out to my partner, Lisa, who thought this was an online tournament. She didn't know it was in Thai. So I literally had to kind of drag her here. So yeah, I'm very, very thankful for that.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The crux of OG's case is that on our side, men is the only one that works, and therefore all of these harms unlock. But the question is, this happens because of things like the patriarchy, which I don't know how they magically change. So even if women don't have to take a long maternity leave, they are still looked down upon because the image that they might be less competent, or because the top people are dominated by men, and therefore men have more connections and are able to rise to the top. And therefore, the question is, I don't know how they actually change this. We're going to prove that we actually have other ways of combating this. Other rebuttals are going to be integrated. But the main extension I'm going to make to Lisa's case is we get more societal change that benefits neolocal marriages and also other forms of marriages. I'm going to deeper explain this, but this is important because even on their side, not everyone can rely on the wife's parents. Maybe they're too old, maybe their parents have already died, or maybe they're so distant or in a terrible relationship that they simply can't opt in even if this norm is there. So even on their side, where the norm is matrilocal, there are people who suffer within neolocal marriages, which are a minority and therefore can't voice out on the concerns. So how do they suffer? We think this looks like there are less nurseries being built, or it's harder for husbands to take paternity leave, for example, or services like nannies becoming more expensive because there's less people that opt in because the expectation is that the wife's parents have to take care of this. Why is this hard to establish uniquely on their side? First of all, note that it's hard to speak up because when you expect that the wife's parents will help, blame is put on the individual families. You feel ashamed that you say that you need more help in terms of these services or in terms of other people. We think it's on our side, it's different. You are able to speak up, and the issue is something that is shared by all women, where feminist movement is able to galvanize support. Even if the women are less likely to have help, for example, we think that they're likely to be able to mobilize as a movement. But second of all, there's also less people who voice out because there's less people who need these services when they can rely on the wife's parents. Although they are unhappy, although this reliance on the wife's parents is not something that fully fulfills them, it's hard to say that you want a different alternative rather than this when there's already existing ways of dealing with this. And the expectation from the wife's parents is that they are going to take care of the children. The government on their side has less incentive to respond because it's not a significant voter base, even if it's a minority that's speaking up. You can't justify putting funding into this when it benefits like less people, and therefore we think we get less of these services. But third of all, simply the fact that there's less people using these services, there's less companies that opt into building nurseries, for example, there's less competition, which means that things are probably going to be overpriced or the quality might not be good. Why we get this is just to flip up the mechanisms I already gave you. On our side, we think there's a feminist movement pushing more for like equal burden in terms of works or like taking care of the household. There's more people that have to rely on these services like nurseries or daycare, which means that the prices are much likely to be lower, that the governments are more likely to subsidize this because it becomes an issue that they can win elections on. And we think that this is a massive impact. We think this impacts in two ways. First of all, in terms of neolocal marriages, as I already framed, not everyone can rely on matrilocal marriages, even on their side. We think that these people are forced to suffer, forced to find a way to get through this. On our side, they can rely on these services, for example. But second of all, it increases the choices for everyone, even people within matrilocal marriages, because on their side, they have to rely on the wife's parents, even with all the harms that Lisa explained. On our side, they can use these services when they deem that it's necessary, when they see that it's much better than relying on the wife's parents, or you can like lower the burden on everyone. So if government wants to claim that they have more equal pay, that have more women being able to work, we think that on our side, we also achieve that too, but with women having more choices on how to do that on our side, as how we've seen in the modern society, how now there's more recognition of how women like need to be represented, or like acknowledgement of difference in wages, for example, that and kind of like the efforts to try to change this. And we think that this is something that we get on our side. Yeah, so next I'm going to deal with the claim that is coming from government. Note that a lot of the claim they say, I think it's not exclusive. In terms of like getting help, if you have a good relationship with your parents, you can still ask for help. For example, have your grandparents look after your children, like during the weekends when you're away or you want to work. Your parents like sending you foods or like shopping stuff, and we think that this still can happen on our side. And therefore, they don't really have an exclusive benefit. Government has to prove why they have to live under the same roof and share food every day. We think that that results in the harms that Lisa explained in terms of the relationships. But an important thing on government side is they don't change the norm. They just shifted like the pressure, because if the expectation is that women should raise kids, instead of the wife taking care, now it's the wife's mother having to stay at home and take care of the kids. They might have to retire faster from work, now they have to stay at home, now they have to lose the position that you have built up on your work. And therefore, they lower the burden for the wife, but they put more burden on the wife's mother, so they don't really change anything. Now, and also, note that men also don't have like the pressure to stay home. They can easily say, what need is there for me to take care of the kids? When you have your parents here, I'm actually very uncomfortable with having your parents here, but I'm still allowing it. Why are you still like asking me to help? You think that this justification is okay? Before going on, I'll keep going.
Outside of the house, women's families are still likely to afford the nursery services if it's affordable. Why is it unique that only you have this cheaper services?
But I don't know why they're going to opt in if the expectation is that the wife's parents are actually the ones that have to take care. We think that that expectation is something that uniquely exists on their side. Then, yeah, so finally, weighing of why maintaining relationship is something that is important, which Lisa explained to you. First of all, this is something you go through every day, and expect a large range of people. It's constant stress of not being happy, having to doubt if this person is right. Even if you love the other person, you're stressed because you don't get along with the wife's parents, for example, and you can't opt out because you depend on them for them to take care of their children. We think that this is harmful. But second of all, on both sides, there's also pressure to marry. There's stigmatization of when you divorce, for example, and therefore it's probably too difficult to opt out, even if you are in a bad relationship. You constantly feel unhappy. We think that this is a problem you can't solve in any other way, and therefore it's something that you should weigh in this debate, and therefore proud to oppose.
Thank you so much. First, a few pieces of shout out. First, to my beloved China debate community. It has been such a fun journey, and I especially want to thank my fellow debaters Carol, Elle, Ray, Ivy, Alex, Musky, the NUS kids, and Betty and Andy, who are also sitting on this stage. It's been so fun debating with you, and it's so proud to have 2 Chinese teams in EFL final this year. And we never imagined it was possible, so that's why we only brought 1 flag. I'm so happy we're on the same bench. Okay, so second piece of shout out to my previous partner Claire, who lost her passport 1 week before the tournament and couldn't make it, and my current partner Anne, who I asked to join me like 4 days before the tournament and miraculously said yes. I wouldn't be here without her. Thank you. Okay, and last piece of quick shout out just to my boyfriend Ricky, who was ABP finalist last year, and he's the best debater, best coach, and the best boyfriend I could ever ask for. I'm so happy that I'm standing here, and I hope I can make you proud. Every year in China, tens of thousands of female infants are aborted because their lives are deemed as worthless. In China, there's a saying called married daughters are like water spilled, because once you're married, you're detached as a woman from the duties to your parents' household. And we believe that this is likely to persist even if in neolocal marriages, where both men and women are detached from their original family. Because it looks like, because of the patriarchal structure that has persisted for so long, on holidays, you still return to your to the husband's family instead of the wife's family. And you also have more contact with the husband's family, because you still deem that as a man, you still feel connected to your original family. And wives are married in instead of independently, like forming a new family. And we believe that in rural regions in China, the men to women ratio has been unimaginably high because of all these girls that are aborted or just killed at a very young age. Even if the Chinese government has banned gender detection during pregnancy, still this cannot solve the problem of infanticide when girls just accidentally die in the household because their parents don't want to take care of them. We believe that matrilocal marriages is the only way and the only force to solve this problem from its root cause. So first, our horizontal extension on why more girls are simply going to be born and why that is a good thing. So we think this is going to happen in neolocal marriages. First thing, we believe that girls are likely to be aborted because of 3 reasons. Number 1, the deep-rooted idea about girls just being inferior. Girls cannot be put on the book of family in most Chinese villages, and also I believe in a lot of conservative contexts where women are not deemed as entire human beings. Secondly, when you give birth to a girl, you need to pay for her when she starts a new family, if it's a neolocal marriage. You need to give her money, but you cannot take anything back. The third thing is just that girls, when they're not married yet, when they're in these rural households, which mainly rely on farming, they can't take much responsibility before they marry, because the mother herself can take most of the housework chores in these families. And the extra girl would just mean you have to pay for her extra cost of living without getting anything in return, because the child-rearing duties are often already completed by the mother, and there's literally no use for her in the household. This means that in places where division of labor is so strong and men are deemed as labor forces who can work in the factory or in the farm, while women can only stay at home, girls who are born are deemed as useless. So we think that on their side of the house, what happens is that you don't want to give birth to girls in the first place, because you have to give them money to support their lives, so you cannot get anything in return. Why does matrilocal marriage solve this problem? We think that first of all, when your daughter marries, you get a new grown-up man marrying into this family as a valuable additional labor force who helps you with all these farm works and who can contribute more to your family. So you really want to raise a girl and give birth to a girl in the first place because you want this additional workforce. Second of all, you have a sense that your family is being expanded if you have a daughter, meaning that she's going to stay in your household for decades, meaning that you have very strong connections with her. She is deemed as part of yourself, instead of deemed as someone who would be eventually married off and who just doesn't have any connections with you. We believe that because of these reasons, simply more female babies are going to be born on our side of the house. Why is this the biggest possible impact in this round of the debate? Number 1, on principle, we believe in the right of life, and we don't think babies are supposed to be aborted just because they're born into the so-called wrong gender. We don't think they should take responsibility in any of this, and it's just terrible that they're deprived of their life
simply because they're women. Second of all, on utility of life, we think life is in infinite possibilities and freedom. The fact that you have one more girl being born instead of being drowned at a very young age means that she could potentially make her life goals. She could potentially be happy and have her freedom. And even if she's not happy, we think even in the worst case, you can opt out of life, but you cannot opt out of death. And we think we should give that freedom of choice to these female babies who would otherwise, be aborted. Lastly, we think on societal level, a more balanced gender ratio means that there will be a lower crime rate. Notice that in a lot of areas right now, crimes are happening because young men cannot find partners because the gender ratio is very imbalanced. There are not enough young women to start families with them. This means that these young men who are very sexually active and who also believe that they're entitled to a family cannot get their desires satisfied, and this means they're more likely to become insults, they're more likely to hate the entire society because they believe their rights are deprived, and they're more likely to commit crimes. Moving on to our vertical extension, we believe that open government, even though they talked about how the distribution of housework and dynamics and domestic violence would be changed, have not fulfilled all the burdens. We're going to prove to you 4 core burdens without which the OG benefits simply cannot be unlocked. First of all, the necessity of the female parents participating in the household. So we think that, first of all, you often don't fully know a person before you get married. This looks like, first of all, because you normally, in a lot of cultures, don't live together for a long time before you get married, meaning that the problems that could potentially occur simply don't occur at a very early phase. And secondly, some people who are inherently bad just hide themselves really well before marriages. They just want to get married, and when it's very hard to divorce, when you have a lot of cost to partake for divorce, then they become the real them and showing you what they're like. We believe that in these cases, there's no possibility for you to determine whether your husband is good or not before the marriage. Even if they're good before the marriage, it also people change. They can also change for the worse, which means that they can also become the ones that are abusing you, even if they seem very sweet right now. Second burden on structural inequalities that takes down OO's claim that it only happens in sexist households. We say all households are sexist because of 5 reasons. First, on strength. We believe social selection for thousands of years had made men generally more strong than women. When there are indeed conflicts, if domestic violence happens more on women because they are weaker, they simply cannot fight back. Second, on personality. Oh, since men can speak up, we think that is not true. Men have been told their entire lives that their feelings matter. They can speak up. And women, on the other side, are more likely to hide what they're feeling and think that their feelings don't matter. Third, on child rearing. We believe that the fact that women have to bear a child in their belly for 9 months simply means that they're weaker during this time, and also the hormone fluctuation also influences the way they rationalize. Fourth, on social narrative, which forces men and women into different behaviors. And lastly, on career and wealth, which means that men are normally even if it's the same job, men always have higher pay. We think that alternatives don't work in domestic violence because CJS has very little help for these microaggressions that's happening in the family. There's very little incentive for you to report these violence in the first place because of gaslighting, because you still love your husband, because you don't want a criminal record for him. And second, neighbors and friends and family who live far away can't really help you because you deem these conflicts as private matters. It's shameful for you to talk to them, and you don't feel that close to them, so you're worried they won't work. Because of these reasons, we believe we unlock the biggest benefits. So proud to propose.
Before starting my speech, some shout out to the people who have supported me. First, all the debaters from Tokyo and also from Japan. Thank you for joining me up. Also, my parents, since I'm debating the for like from junior high to this university. I'm doing debate for like 10 years. My parents is financially and emotionally supporting for 10 years. And also the last week, and my teammate, and also last week to the Mr. Murakami, also John, who is my junior high teacher, who introduced me debating and who also attracted me to the debating, which is a starting point for me to join this debate club. Yep. So my speech begins in 3, 2, 1, now. Opening house will lead this debate in 2 ways. First of all, both opening events depend on the convenient connectivity of parents. Oshi said parents are so kind and also protective, so the married couple can get the benefit. Or on the other hand, said parents intervene too much and people cannot have the flexible relationship. Both opening events didn't prove why the characterization is more likely to happen. That cannot win this debate. But second failure of opening events is both opening events is contingent on having marriage. Because this one is only about the debate of the norm. Even if we have some norm about the marriage, this does not necessarily mean people choose to get married. From the closing operation, first of all, we want to prove why less people choose to get married uniquely on the government. Second, we're talking about why less protection to the woman who will be given on the government bench. The first thing to prove is, dating without marriage, without formal legal marriage, more likely to increase uniquely in the government bench. That is to say, a couple try to choose not to get married and keep informal relationship uniquely on the government bench. Why is this bad? Full way from the closing opposition. First of all, this leads to the mental insecurity of the people in the relationship. That's because until you formally get married, you will always have the risk of in the danger of suddenly losing the relationship. One day, if your partner say, I don't want to be with you anymore, that's the point when you lose the relationship. Yeah, we have the same risk. We have some level of same risk in the marriage, but we still have possible legal protection. Second, we have the way or the emotional barrier to say that once you get married. But second, this is crucial for the people because this has the most strength, the emotion for the people within the relationship. But second of all, marriage also gives you the financial support, for example, from the society. For example, tax exemption or the housing allowance will be in the many society only given to the married couple. Informal couple is often not catered by the government to be the optional support given in the target of the social welfare. So the informal dating relationship often cannot get any kind of financial support. But third, this is also crucial because marriage also gives you much legal protection. For example, when you are in the abuse, police are more likely to be able to case your file compared to the informal relationship. In the case of informal relationship, it is way easier for the police to just say, just break up with your relationship. On the other hand, if you get married, you are more likely to be seriously taken by the police, local police officer by your abuse. This is the only winning case compared to the OG. But first of all, this also increases the career choice for the woman because once you get married and you have a financial sustainable income for the both people, this is a tipping point for the people, women to still keep them working in any way. If you're not still sure if you get married or not, that's the point when you have to when the women are forced to choose the unsustainable life choice and career path uniquely on the government page. Why people choose not to get money on their account? For reasons. First of all, people just reluctant to live together because of because people feel awkward. But second of all, because people do not want to pay much for wife's parents, which they had no previous relationship. Third of all, the husbands also do not want to get married because if wife comes with a huge family, lots of different married couples living under the same big house, there's literally no privacy for you to be in that single house. But first of all, husband family also opposed because you do not want son to move out to the different family because it's very difficult for you to get to your child or get your grandchild. No, this is completely different from open cooperation because open cooperation only assume in either side of the house people at the end get money. But we say that people are unlikely to get money uniquely on the government bench. That's a unique contribution. We've already get over the open bench. Yeah.
In government house, sexual abuse are less likely to happen fundamentally, even if in informal relationship. In opposition house, more women are coerced to opt into marriage, which can actually have a lot of bad consequences because of the bad family labor division. Why is that good? Okay,
first of all, if you buy the case, you need to this woman get coerced into the marriage. That's the point. In that situation, that will symmetrically happen on your side of the house because anyway, that thing will happen. But anyway, That's only my second case. The second extension from the closing option is protection to women get better on the office. Here we agree to the wing from the opening government, which is the woman in the danger of domestic abuse is the most vulnerable after the one we need to care. But we say, the living separately, or the having the married couple separately is way better. The first of all, we already told you from the past extension why they have much more chance to have the legal protection, but here are some other reasons. The first of all, we say the society has less attention to the protection of the woman in government things because of this specific Because even if you as a woman ask for help with police or the local government or the nearby EFF, the first response most likely to be, oh, you get help to your parents, because that's a no, right? You are supposed to live with your parents if you're a wife. That's the point when your neighbor and when your police is reluctant to help because it's too much intervention from their side point of view. But also, women cannot speak up to the other people because that already admits the incapacity of your parents, which is also not good for you. That's the point when the woman is actually unable to get help outside the parent. OG might say, but we still get parents help. But first of all, this is unlikely to happen for two reasons. The first of all, parents can be not capable to actually save wife from the domestic abuse. For example, just because they are too old, or they are just too tired, because of their physical capacity, because if there's young man which is way more physically stronger than the parents or the wife, that's the point when even if you want to actually save your daughter from the abusive husband, it's very difficult to do so. But second of all, parents can also be abusive, right? They didn't explain why the parents are so much incentivized to save that specific daughter. For example, in a big family, if you are part of unwanted child from the house, that's the point when your parents also are not incentivized to save you. Or maybe your parents also do not like you, so maybe your parents just ignore you. That's the point when you have nothing to be helped. The point here is that even if you cannot get any kind of parental support on outside house, you still have a bunch of other support. You can go and get access on outside house. That's a unique tipping point because if you only depend on the parental support to counter domestic abuse, that's the point. Even if let's say 80% of the wife will be like the very safe on their house, remain 20% will have no way to actually get safe on their house. That's a unique tipping point on the outside house because you can reach out to the police or neighbor. Also, society also be watching out if the women are in danger. First, we win this debate by first of all having the most certainty because all try to say, we have the most certainty, but we prove the creative that on off bench uniquely people get married, but second of all, we also try to cater to the most vulnerable people across the coast.
I think the member of opposition for their speech. Now I'd like to talk with
Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?
Okay, thank you. And Daisy has been shouting out, but I want to have an additional shout out to Daisy's previous partner Claire, who lost her passport, so that I can be the one who stands on the podium in the EFL Grand Final.
I'm starting my speech in 3, 2, 1 now. The status quo is already imbalanced. That's why we provide remedy and solutions to make it right. I'm first going to engage with CO because CO's case is quite simple and quite defensive. Their only case is talking about how alternatives can work. But first of all, they never prove why this is mutually exclusive because a lot of the legal protections, CGS, will also exist on our side of house. And second of all, they never prove why parents are not a better stakeholder than the CGS to protect their own daughters. We are going to prove to you, first of all, they actually excel in the incentive level because they are more proximate to their daughters and because they have raised their daughters up from the infant's period, right? And they also are feeling emotionally closer because they're bloodly connected. And also, they're taking care of them and be with them from her birth. How can you not care about when your daughters get abused, right? And secondly, parents are also better stakeholders because they have more capacity to protect protect their children. Notice here, that the parents can actually find out whenever this is going wrong, whenever they're being abused. However, CJS, they're trying to find some clear evidence and proof, unless you can be sent into the court, right? So we think that a lot of the microaggressions, a lot of the potential discrimination and biases cannot actually be identified so well by these kind of CJIs, by these kind of external forces, right? But parents, they live with you together after 5. So that's why they can better do this. And how can they do that? For example, when they notice the slightest change in the dynamic, when you're eating dinner, they can actually voice out, they can actually intervene in their discussions, right? So that's why they are better stakeholders. And now I'm going to engage with OO. OO's first case is about how imbalanced. However, we think that this already exists. And first, why is that the case? First of all, 99% of the society is patriarchal, where fathers are considered as the core in a household. That's why they're already having a lot of discourse power to actually negotiate, right? And second of all, as we already said, male adults usually have better physical strength in a household. And second of all, statistically, we already shown that that fathers are paid better because they have stronger economic powers. It already guaranteed them with certain power of discourse, right? And second of all, we think that third of all, the political structure and also the educational structure, they're already built, they're already constructed around men. So how can you say that, in the alternative, they cannot voice out? We think this is very absurd cases. And the second case they talk about is how they can better relationships, but we think this is also untrue, because living with whom is not the direct tipping point of improving your personal relationships. Why is that the case? We think that this is also going to be flipped by our side. We think that when this kind of matrilocal marriages, they can actually make these parents intervene into your conflicts. Why is that going to be good? Why is this going to lead to better decisions making? First of all, we think that the parents, they usually have more experience than you. They usually have deeper insights and perspectives towards you because they have experienced the similar periods, similar stages with you. So they can give you more suggestions of improvement. And second of all, we think that this leads to more balanced power, as we already proved you why imbalance already exists, right? So they're always going to help their daughters to voice out and make it a more equal relationship. And third of all, based on the incentive level, we think that these mothers, parents, their incentive is not to destroy the relationship or to be so biased towards their daughters. Their incentive always remain in the level of being neutral, in a relatively neutral stance, so that they can maintain a more harmonious relationship inside their household, right? And moving on, they might talk about, how this privacy matters so much in a relationship. We also don't think this is true, because first of all, we think that a certain level of personal space still remains in the household when they can go out for a personal date, when they can get a room, right? And second of all, we think that these people, they're not just like a fresh couples, fresh boyfriends and girlfriends who just made out. They are getting married. This means that their relationships already reached a very stable and long-term stage. And that also directly indicates why this kind of intervention from parents are not going to matter a lot. But moreover, we think this impact is not so important compared to our impact of actual infants dying, they're being abandoned, and also a lot of females are being domestically abused. We think that compared to that, their case does not matter so much. And now I'm going to compare to our opening houses. So why do we win over OG? But before that, closing.
Your case depends on the parents being good parents. How can you say on your house, parents more likely to be good parents?
Parents, of course, they are good parents. As we already said, they are bloody connected. There's no single parent in the house that wish their daughters and sons to be bad, right? And even if there are some abusive parents, it's very, very extreme cases that only manifest in a very, very low level, right? And moreover, if they are bad like this, then it's symmetric on both sides of houses. And moving on to comparing with OG, why do we win over them? Because first of all, OG's case is about how they can lift off the economic burdens. However, that's not comparative, because this case is very weak under opposition's attack, saying that, why don't you move to the father's parents, right? So we think that we are the only side who prove to you why the alternatives of CKS won't work, and we also prove to you how this kind of infants, female infants can be impacted, right? So how this impact can be more important than the so-called economic stability. Because first of all, our scale is bigger, because even if you're from liberal context and you don't believe this child infants need to be true, but it actually happens in a lot of conservative areas like China and India. So for example, the abortions, for example, how the parents will kill and abandon these babies. How, for example, in the orphans' houses in China, you actually see more females because of the fact that they are harder to be adopted because they don't care about the daughters inside their houses. And also you see in countries like India, these girls are sold to become coerced in some kind of sex workers, right? So we think that this scale is already very big, and the likelihood of changing that is very, very high. As we proved to you, we're trying to solve the root cause of these sexes inside family structures. When these daughters are viewed as the personal belongings to husbands, but this status quo can be changed in our model because in our model, the wives are not just wives. The wives are also belonging to the house as the daughters, right? So this potentially means that at the meantime, they're also oppressors of their original family. That's why they're going to be valued more. And moving on, why we're caring about the most vulnerable stakeholder in this debate? Because these girls, these infants, they are thrown into the gutter when they don't even know how to walk. They are killed in the mother's belly when they don't even form awareness. That's why we need to care about them because they don't even have the autonomy to make choices for themselves. That's why we already win. Isn't that proud to propose?
I think the government has heard their speech. Now I invite the opposition to here. Let's go Tokyo! Let's go Tokyo!
Shout out to all my friends from inside and outside Japan. Also shout out to my therapist and my psychiatrist. The reason I'm physically able to be here is because of all of the support I get on a day-to-day basis. Mental health really, really matters. Even if you're a debater, it matters. So I hope people understand. Start in 3, 2, 1. I want to first point out a very important logical consistency in the closing how they say that parents would always love their child, but this really undercuts their main case because they're talking about a paradigm where parents literally consider their child worthless based on their gender. If parents really do biologically love their children regardless, all these issues wouldn't be happening in the first place. So they have to concede to the fact that parenting and the love they have for their child runs on the spectrum. Some parents obviously love their kids, some parents absolutely hate the look of their kids' faces. Like there's obviously a spectrum at the end of the day. So in the case that sometimes parents do love their kids, sometimes they do not. Why are their case still not good enough for them to win the debate? The first thing to note is their general idea that lots of girls are aborted even before they are born, and we change this on their side of the house. It's just a problem-solution mismatch because I think there's various other reasons why girls still get aborted even before they are born. First, there's just general sexism that makes parents believe that their sons are going to earn much more money in the future, their sons are much more smarter and cooler than like a daughter who just yaps all the time. All of these general social trends makes parents compelled to love their sons or to prefer sons more over their daughters. Secondly, and this sounds bad because I'm going against the Chinese team, but I think if you read the news, you understand that the reason why people abort girls in China was originally because of a one-child policy that made parents only able to have one kid. So at the end of the day, I still feel that people aborting kids based on their gender is not something that is caused because of the fact that their girls would move out, but necessarily because of so many other societal and policy factors that they never acknowledge, right? So if the cost, and taking them at their best, if the cost for aborting girls is because they won't be a financial asset, and this changes on their side because now girls are going to carry their husbands back home with them for the future, then it's at best a symmetric part, because on their side then nobody wants sons anymore, because if you give birth to a son, your son is not going to be a financial asset because they're going to be moving out in the future and moving over with their wives, and that's not something parents want according to their incentive. So I think for all these reasons, their case is a problem-solution mismatch. Even if it is a match, it's symmetrical on their side of the house because the same analysis applies to the opposite gender. Then they respond to our case by saying that, oh, the criminal justice system is not as effective, parents are better actors. Note, I already explained to you why parents are not always the good actors, but they completely strawman and neglect the nuances coming from our member's speech. We told you as a premise that people do not want to get married when you have to live with your wife's parents. This is just intuitive. You wouldn't want to live with a stranger. You wouldn't want to live with an authority figure of your wife, potentially telling you what you have to do. You don't want to live with your wife's sister's family who are all living under the same roof. You don't want to come back to home with so many kids running around because you're living with like 4 different families altogether. These are all things that you generally do not want as an individual, so less people get married on their side. And this is just bad because staying in a long-term relationship with unstable futures and unsure speculations about whether you'll ever get to be married is in itself super harmful for the individuals. Because first, it's not just the criminal justice system. You just do not get treated seriously when you are not married in many societies. Because people think that relationships are not serious. People think that dating is not something that you need to take into consideration properly when you're asking for things like welfare, when you're asking for things like rights. All of these legal protections and financial support that you get as a married couple are all gone on their side of the house, right? So I think these are all reasons why just CG is just out of the debate. Moving on to opening government. Their main case is that if you live together, the family can take care of the kid, and that is good. First, they do not explain why this then leads to women getting detached from this burden, which is the main impact of their case. They're claiming that if parents take care of their kids, then women can go work. But I don't think this is something that was mechanized properly by opening government. And I think even if it is true, the benefits are at best short-term. Because what if your parents fall ill, or they pass away, or what if your younger sister gets married and now there's 4 children for this elderly couple to take care of? And I think the average individual is just irrational. You're short-termist, you might be lovesick, you might have baby fever, so it's just a high possibility that you're going to be opting into this marriage thinking that the parents would always take care of your child, when in reality this is actually a very unrealistic and unsustainable option that you're forcing yourself into. On our side of the house, you at least get much more sustainable plans to take care of the child, because no matter how irrational you are, you understand that once you get married, you guys are on your own. So you're taking a child on your own. You have to take care of the house on your own. These are all exclusive incentives that you get on our side of the house. And I think you at least try to, for example, live somewhere that is near daycare. You try to find a job that at least has maternity leaves. These are all just good for you as a woman in general, in terms of finding the best career that takes care of your needs as a woman. But I also think that it's better for the family and for the child as a home, right? But before I move on, I'll take a few words from opening.
Even if they actually in marriage, you still need to be a housewife. We still have proof to you. By in our house, women receive more education, which is the premise for them to get more choices in the future and have a better life, and be exposed to progressive ideas and their perspectives.
Again, I think that's premised on the idea that women are now able to detach themselves from the traditional gender roles, right? This is an assertion on your end, and I've already explained why this is at best unsustainable. But lastly, I would also note that they're saying that parents care about their daughters, so they'll be much more kinder. Again, I think this is asserted for parents to just automatically love their child. But there's a ground consensus that patriarchy exists and women are treated as objects, someone who can get married off in the future. So even if you don't hate your child, as a grandfather, you probably don't want to take care of your children's smelly diapers while your daughter gets to have a glamorous career life in the city. You wouldn't want that as a parent, probably. So I think even on their side of the house, stuff like education is at best symmetric, because you as a parent are probably not that benevolent as they would have liked to claim, right? Finally, with their opening half, I think OO was first of all uncharitable to OG when they assumed that things like sexism and abuse would always remain the same. This, although we can see too, disregards all of the basic nuances that was coming from OO. And if sexism is that permanent, their impacts are also undercut, because on their side, they say that there's equal partnership on all counterfactual, and this is assertive. They never explain why this is the case. We provide the prerequisite mechanism as to how you can better have methods to achieve equal relationship. There are things like legal protection, there are things like financial protection. These are the exclusive mechanism that unlock so many of opening off's impacts at the end of the day. So I think for all these reasons, we are the ones who make people feel safe and actually have an equal relationship. For all these reasons, opposed.
Hello? Hello everyone. Okay, and as per the schedule, checkout starts at 9 o'clock a.m. If you have not checked out by this time and decide to delay your checkout for whatever reason, please be aware that starting 1 o'clock p.m., which is 28 minutes from now, the hotel will charge you for half a day of stay. Okay, once again, it's been very clear that the schedule states that you have to check out at 9 o'clock a.m. before you head over to the grand finals and the awarding venue. So, okay, you have 28 minutes to check out. Again, checkout is at 9 a.m. If you have not checked out yet, please do so right now. You only have about 28 minutes. Thank you.
Panelists and judges for the grand finals, please come to the front and occupy the tables at the front. Everyone, please be quiet and remain quiet because the teams for the grand finals are prepping outside. So please be very quiet. The draws and motions for the grand finals were released ahead of time to the teams. On opening government, you have NTU. On opening opposition, you have NUS. On closing government, you have UPD. And on closing opposition, you have Tsuchiya. The motion for the grand final, which had an info slide that you can read in Slack, reads, "This House prefers a world where individuals' collective identity is based primarily on livelihood." The round will start in a few minutes.
Hello?
Are your stuff here or back there? Your luggage and all? Back at the back. Okay. I'll try to get come back as well.
Prep time is up, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
It's time to start.
Hello.
Hi everyone, can you all please keep quiet, sit down, so that we can start? Thank you.
Hello, mic test. Am I audible?
Okay.
Charlie, whenever you're ready, yeah.
everyone for the grand final of ABP 2024. To start with, I'll introduce the panel. Judging with me, well, my name is Charlie, and judging with me, I have Devashish, Francis, Raymond, Bella, Haikal, and minami. So congrats to all the judges as well. In government, we have NTU. In opening opposition, we have NUS. Closing government, from the Philippines, we have UPD.
1, 2, 3,
And finally, and closing opposition, we have Tokyo.
Let's go, go, go! Let's go, go, go! Your matani.
Alright, I won't be able to do announcements throughout the debate because unfortunately we don't have a mic down at the judges' table. But I will introduce the first speaker. So on the motion, this House prefers a world where individual primary collective identity is based on livelihood, I welcome Prime Minister.
Is this okay? Okay. I know everyone thinks shoutouts are a bit cringe, but I'm never gonna get to do this again, so I'll do it real quick. First of all, just thank you to the whole Singapore circuit. Thank you to everyone I've debated with or against. You guys are at least half the reason I'm still doing this nonsense. Thank you as well to the NTU debate team, even though they gave me a lot of nonsense for honestly no good reason. But you're still my club, I guess. Something collective identity. Thirdly, thank you as well to my wonderful partner Tan. We actually first met at the debate tournament 10 years ago. So we've come a long way, but I really need to retire. Last of all, thank you to my great friend, Rilu, that I'm still sorry. Identities are important because they don't just shape what you think is meaningful in life and what you think you should pursue, but they also shape the way societies see themselves and the way societies divide themselves. And that's the reason why a collective identity based on livelihood is better both for individual choice and actualization, but it's also better in terms of the way societies see themselves in ways that are more permeable and less sectarian in nature. What is the counterfactual of the identity based on livelihood? We think that you simply identify based on livelihood in your profession that you've been able to pick for yourself and you've been able to generate income, meaning, purpose in your life with. This looks like, for example, connecting with others of the same profession, feeling a common connection because you're the same job, the same common interests, the same outcomes, and you have faced the same challenges. It looks like, for example, taking pride in the skills that the profession usually gives you. So, for example, if you're a cook, you're really good at cooking, you're really good at those technical skills, you tend to be proud of your ability, you're proud of the fact that you've honed those skills for 10 years and you've created that deep amount of expertise. But thirdly, it also means taking joy in the social benefits and economic benefits that your livelihood uniquely provides. So for a lot of people who are, again, for example, cooks, they take huge joy in the fact that, for example, when your customer tells you that the thing you cooked was like really nice, they really enjoyed it, the fact that they come here with their family every Saturday to spend family time together, you find meaning, you find joy, you find purpose in life. This is how you see your role in society, that's how you find meaning out of it. That's what the counterfactual of identity based on livelihoods looks like. Two arguments for the house today. Firstly, on how this means there's more individual access for more personally meaningful identities. Secondly, on why it creates, it means that you create a more porous society with less sectarian divides later. Firstly, on individual access. Firstly, I just want to say again that identity is pretty important. It tells you what you should do, it tells you how to act, it tells you what you should be proud of and what you should maybe not be proud of. The problem in status quo is that many people are simply born with the inherent traits that birth them into an identity that's simply incoherent and incongruent with their personality in ways that can never be reconciled. This looks like, for example, if you're born into a culture, if you're born into a race and nation which usually imbues you with a particular culture that you're expected to opt into, but you simply don't like the culture, you don't like the social norms the culture expects of you, the rituals and practices you're expected to attend, the dress the way you're expected to dress just because you're that particular race, the language you're forced to speak because you're from that particular ethnic group and you're supposed to be proud of that particular ethnicity. In many cases, people simply don't like these things, people simply feel the ick, and there's something that they simply cannot resolve, but unfortunately they cannot change these inherent traits, and they are forced to opt in anyway. This is particularly bad for two reasons. First, that oftentimes society shames these individuals for not being proud of their inherent traits, for not being proud of the fact that, for example, you're ethnically Chinese and you can't speak Chinese properly because I can't speak Chinese properly, for the fact that you are born into Singapore, and Singapore is a great nation, like third world and first world, but how can you shit on Singapore? You're so ungrateful for the nation you're born into. These are all the sort of societal shames that society places on you, that your family and friends place on you when you say and act in a way that does not cohere with the inherent traits you're born into. But second of all is that people shame themselves. All this stuff that people tell you every single day gets into your head. You internalize these as the standards on which you should judge your own self. So even when others are not judging you, even when you're in the comfort of your own bedroom, you never feel fulfilled. You will suffer an identity crisis when you feel that you can never really fill in the shoes that you were born into, and that's particularly harmful. How does this change on our side? Our counterculture is very simple. When identity is based on a profession, this means three key changes. The first is that you simply feel much less obligation to commit to these inherently imbued traits. Society places on you far less expectation to commit to these inherently imbued traits, and you're able to escape many of these social expectations, many of these personal expectations, and the shame and self-shame that comes with not being able to fulfill these expectations. But second of all, you can simply choose a livelihood that is most coherent with your unique skills and preferences. And if it doesn't work out, these things are permeable and porous, and you can change your livelihood again to find something that works out for you. So it looks like, for example, if you're an individual that's just good with their hands, likes making handicrafts, doesn't like interacting with other individuals, but enjoys just focusing on something and really getting it done properly, enjoys creating something good, creating a product. You can be, for example, an artisan, and it's something that coheres strongly with identity. It's something that you can pick up based on these specific things that you feel you are good at, that you feel make the most meaning in your life, and something you can opt into and change later on if you make a mistake from the get-go. But the third thing is that you're also just best able to self-actualize, because now that you've been able to opt out of identities that don't cohere with you and opt in to identities that do cohere with you, you've created a standard for yourself that tells you what is good in your life, what's meaningful in your life, and you've created a standard that's much more coherent with your personal preferences and your personal abilities, and you're able to self-actualize, because when these preferences and abilities match your own preferences and abilities most, that's when you're best able to actualize and fulfill these particular expectations. Closing.
Pressure is going to exist anyway based on any identity you form. Point example, debaters feel horrible when they're bad at debating because they feel that is part of their identity.
Yes, but if I was actually bad at debating, which I don't think I'm not too bad at it, I think, I can simply just stop debating and opt out of it, and I don't have to force myself or expect myself to be a good debater. The problem is I unfortunately cannot opt out of being Chinese. Moving on, second argument, on a more poor society and less sectarian divides. Identity is the cause of many social conflicts, things like racial conflicts, things like national conflicts, things like religious conflicts. These conflicts occur uniquely with inherent traits, because these are for two reasons. The first is that many of these are unchangeable inherent traits, and in the world of resource scarcity, this suggests that there's no way to assimilate these other identities into your particular culture, and the only way is to outcompete them for the resources and cultural space that exists in the world. So there's no alternative of assimilation. But the third that many of these narratives regarding inherent traits simply imply superiority. They imply that you should be proud of your identity because you're not another identity. You should be proud of the specific race because your race contains particular traits like being hardworking or industrious that other races were not culturally or genetically imbued with. Many of these narratives suggest inferiority or superiority of other races, and that fuels the conflicts that divide and tear apart many societies. How does this change in the OG world? Two ways. The first is that permeability. At the bare minimum, you can opt out of identities that are oppressed and marginalized are involved in the conflict. Whereas the other side, people define you by these inherent traits and by the way you look and by the place you were born in, even if you don't personally identify with these things. But the second way it changes is that narratives surrounding livelihood identities are simply much more interdependent and less divisive, right? Because livelihood identities provide an interdependent and mutual respect for all people involved. You are proud of your livelihood, but you are also appreciative of the value of other livelihoods and other careers. The reason this is the case is simply because a society is naturally interdependent on all these livelihoods exist. No singular livelihood is able to dominate society, then create a functioning society and economy. You need not just the fisherman to catch the fish, but also the cook to actually prepare the fish, and the hospitality expert to serve the fish in a way that makes people happy. Because all these cultures and all these livelihoods are expected, they gain mutual respect for each other. For all these reasons, opening the
Opening government locks people into a world where livelihood dictates your life and purpose without any meaningful recourse to decide that identity for themselves. Their concern with opposition bench's counterfactual is, what if your identity is incongruent with your personality? But that problem lies exactly in their paradigm. What if you're born into a family of fishermen but you just dislike fishing or just don't like it enough to do it as a job every single day for the rest of your life? And that is the crux of the negative case I will push on their side of the house. Later I will explain why the counterfactual is better on side opposition. First main claim then, why is it that in a world where livelihood is the primary collective identity, you constrain individuals' agency with what they want to do in life? I want to be clear that side government has to defend a world where societies are structured around livelihood. So this is not just an internal pressure, but rather a collective societal force that is significantly difficult for you to push back against as a singular person. There are two things I will highlight under this argument. The first is this idea that on their side, you are locked into a specific livelihood for many reasons that exist in many societies we live in today. It can look like things being passed down to your parents, a job of a specific trade. Maybe it's a common trait in your specific community of your geographical region. Maybe you're just naturally skilled at something and therefore that is something society has assigned to you or something you naturally gravitate towards. But the problem exists is that inevitably individuals would want to opt out of what they were assigned to initially. People would want to opt out maybe because of subjective preference. Over time, they just realize with their collective lived experiences that they have different preferences. They would rather do other things that make them happy because what made me happy when I was 5 years old is very different from what makes me happy now at the age of 19. But also some jobs just might not pay well and you would want to get a better job that gives you greater social mobility. And because we live in a capitalist world, it's obviously important that individuals have the financial agency to decide what they want to do that unlocks them a greater amount of agency into the future when they have more money. But there's also the idea that you as a person might, ever since I was younger, I have continuously identified as a Chinese
that job if it gives you financial stability and recovery, and also is seen as a comparative advantage that other people don't have. But secondly, there's also community pressure, because communities are built around livelihoods. If you choose to give up on your job as a fisherman, you are seen as single-handedly destroying the economy because no one else has the comparative advantage of being a fisherman, and you are now screwing over everyone else in the community by not giving them enough food. So there's a community pressure because everyone else has their own self-preservation interests and are now in conflict with yours. Then therefore you'll be pressured to want to stay for the sake of your family or your community. But the third thing is internal pressure, because you are seen as naturally gifted in swimming, let's say, and therefore it's something you want to do for the rest of your life. There's an internal conflict that prevents you from wanting to explore opt-out options, and you believe that maybe I'm just bad at my job, maybe I'm ungrateful, or I'm just not grateful enough for my community, and therefore I would want to opt out. So for these reasons, there are incredibly many reasons for why it's impossible for people to seek any kind of recourse or agency on their side of the house. The second thing I will highlight under this argument is this idea that on their side, there are wider societal forces assign the livelihood of individuals in particularly harmful ways, because people are still identified as belonging to certain categories. Just because I do a certain job doesn't mean people no longer see me as a woman or as an immigrant or from someone in a lower caste, for example. Like, these other identity markers will still exist. Like in the peak of India's caste system, which is livelihood-based, people will still have strict restrictions on people who came from lower caste. So just because you have livelihood doesn't mean everyone is equally meritocratic and super progressive. Obviously, there are still these other factors that do exist. And we think it's particularly harmful if your livelihood is a primary collective identity, because then your other identity markers box you into that livelihood. For example, if you're a woman, you are more likely to be seen as a caretaker in your society, or if you're an immigrant, you will be assigned manual labor jobs compared to the people who have lived in a certain place for longer periods of time. And it is very harmful, because society decides livelihoods based on the next most salient identity. So if I live in a patriarchal society, people will pay extra attention to the fact that I am a woman, and are therefore more likely to assign me more gender roles based on me being a woman and therefore having to be a nurse or a teacher or a helper or someone who takes care of children, let's say. Or if you live in a very racist society, the fact that you are a person of color would mean that next salient identity would dictate what your livelihood is likely going to be, which would probably be manual labor, for example, which is then why the harms compound on their side of the house when livelihood is taken as the primary identity marker, because it also comes in terms of all these other identity markers. Before I continue, closing.
The world you describe is status quo, where the race of a Filipino woman is assigned to being a domestic worker. It being primary means that everything else as a trade-off gets weaker.
No. Just because, like, on their side of the house, like, misogyny doesn't exist. Like, people just don't stop registering as a woman, right? Like, these things will still exist on either side of the house. In the Indian caste system, where it's mostly livelihood-based, people still pay attention if you came from a lower caste or if you are a woman. That still does exist for many external reasons outside of livelihood, because people don't just operate based on cost-benefit analysis and money, right? So for these reasons on their side of the house, there's still significant reasons why structurally people will be locked into these identities. But because of that, let me just explain what the alternative is given the POI. The alternative on our side of the house is we celebrate and put a premium on diversity. We demonize one-dimensional purist nationalist ideas. This is why when we see a very purist nationalist country, we dismiss them as backward, as racist, as misogynist. People on the internet glamorize you if you're like Asian or if you're like a mixed heritage, right? People are very proud to say that they're mixed, like aka me, like I'm very proud of it, right? So for a lot of these people, diversity is something that is being put on a premium. Singapore brands itself as a multicultural society. So for many reasons, we live in a world now where it's normalized to want to embrace diversity. So on our side of the house, you're more likely to get a mixture of identities where people can pick and choose their nationality, culture, and agency. So even though I cannot opt out of being Chinese, I can still lean into my more Filipino identity, or lean into my gender, or lean into these other identity markers that make me who I am based on my lived experiences. But these are also social constructs, which is a good thing, which means there is discourse and room to discuss what makes you a Singaporean, what makes you a Filipino. These are things that you can discuss on our side of the house, because these are not set in stone compared to livelihood. So for a lot of people, there's an important space of agency that allows them to dictate what they want to do for the rest of their lives. But the more important benefit on our side of the house is you also give people a freedom to get different kinds of jobs. You have agency to explore because there's no predetermined conception of who you ought to be. So even though you might be born in a certain place or be given certain skills, that doesn't mean that for the rest of your life you're locked into that kind of livelihood. On our side of the house, society is receptive to your choices because you have support. You're able to pursue what you want to do rather than have society react to you negatively or actively guilt trip you or gaslight you or peer pressure you into being unable to opt into these other further choices, because our side of the house places a premium on mobility. That's why in status quo, there's a trend of moving between different jobs. Like no one stays in the same job for the rest of their life anymore. We think this is a good thing because we give people a greater amount of agency. What happens in government is that people still have these other identities. People will still see themselves as a woman because that's not something you can erase. You cannot opt out of being a woman or being like Chinese and all these other traits you have. But on the other side, when there's a premium on livelihood, you are how to oppose.
So my first shout out goes to a man by the name of Alfred Go. Alfred was my debate coach back in secondary school, and Alfred was also my teammate's debate coach in high school. I am as old as Alfred was when I first met him, which is 10 years ago. But even now, I still go to him for advice and guidance. And his advice for me today is to start my speech slow. Because if I start fast, then I get swallowed up by the room, the crowd, the lights, and I'll be lost in the finals. And so I'm starting this shout out slow because I still have somewhere to go and it feels like he's with me. My second shout out goes to someone in the audience. I've once remarked that the most envious I've been of a debater is when he made the World Grand Finals. Not because he made the World Grand Finals, but because when he did so, his students were watching. I have the bigger honor today to be in in-person Grand Finals with my student watching in the audience there. She's right there. So, Li Han. Thank you for giving me this honor, for letting me know how it feels, and I cannot wait to see what you achieve in the future. My third shout out is to everyone here, because I wrote this shout out on 18th August, the day Li Han confirmed that she was going to join us in Krabi. Thank you everyone, organizers, judges, debaters, for letting this shout out see the light of day. Panel, lastly, if you truly love debate, you cannot give another finals win to opening opposition. And the people have spoken. Guys, I want you to think about how crazy the first person who invented surfing looked, because he said there's a plank of water and let's stand on it. Or the first person who invented horseback riding, because that's literally riding on a wild animal. Or the first person who looked at hockey and said, we need to do this, but on ice. These people are all crazy in their own ways, but they all have something in common. They have the ability to see beauty in something and pursue it at all costs. This section of my speech is incredibly weak, but I want to appeal to your common humanity. Because we are all here today because we saw something special in, say, this sport of debating. In taking the floor, in being king for the 7 minutes, and then surviving the onslaught for the rest of the round. This is outcome independent because we don't have to be good. Just being close to something that we see beauty in gives us meaning in that life. Imagine a world where we live in the moment today. We stay in our common space for the love of this endeavor and not have to go back to being Vietnamese or Chinese or man or woman or Singaporean or Malaysian or Muslim or Christians. These things are just not ourselves. These are restraints. The restraint of race, gender, and religion were inflicted upon us. Do things like the threatening of internal damnation if it's the case that we marry an infidel. Things like the shame and cowardice if it's the case that you don't serve in your nation's armed forces. Things like the alienation brought upon you if it's the case that you cry as a man or lift weights as a woman. Let's live in a world where we can follow the spark and be ourselves. The differences in our communities, I think, is something that leader of opposition never responded to. We told you that the differences are couplefold. The first is that these communities live more peacefully amongst one another. There are two reasons. The first is that they are dependent on one another. So they don't have to love each other, but they cannot do without one another. Because if I live by the sea, I need someone to live by the land to give me vegetables. If I'm a craftsman, I need a merchant to bring these goods around so that I can make a living. So before leaders push for violence, they push for self-sufficiency. Because that makes it so that you're no longer needed to rely on one another, to see humanity in the other person, and therefore you are outright capable of destroying them. The second reason
is that if tension exists, it's just so much harder for people to pick up arms. Let me tell you from personal experience as a conscript, like being a soldier sucks. But the reason why we have people serving in the armed forces at the moment is because we tell them that they ought not to love what they do, but they ought to love the arbitrary borders drawn in the sand or the deities in the shape of a cat and a dog. The bottom line is, people on outside the house have less hatred against one another, but even as the case that they hold hatred, the threshold for conflict is just drastically much higher. The impact is important because we agree, maybe the worst case on our side is a caste system, but their worst case is literally genocide. The scale of impact is uncomparable. The second difference that we talked about is that communities on outside the house live with more support within them. There are two reasons for this. The first is you likely wholeheartedly choose to be in this community, or to the very least you believe that others do the same. And therefore you see yourself in one another because that love is so intrinsic and so tangible. I don't remember helping a random Vietnamese or random Singaporean just because they're so. There has to be like some kind of campaigns drawing out support and drawing this imaginary identity. I've lost count of the number of times I helped a random person on Facebook messaging me on a question on debate because I see myself in that person, because that love hits home and that humanizes that person. Therefore, I'm willing whatever it takes to help that person out, because that is also helping me out in my own identity. The second reason is that on both sides within these communities, there will still exist differences. The propensity of conflict within community then is dependent on how strong the bond of commonality is. The bond of commonality on their side is weak in race and religion, because within race, religion, and national identities, people still segment themselves through things like, for example, caste system, or the degree by which they fall into the identity. And on outside the house, I think people are less likely to divide because we are more able to see that commonality in love. So the difference is, because the love is likely intrinsic to some capacity, I think we're able to see and feel it all the time, but the love for race, religion is weak because it's only evoked at certain times when it's convenient for the power structure to do so and call upon you, and in those instances when they do not, we forget and we fall back on to hate. The bottom line then is on outside the house, people are more likely to help one another. So, in the worst case scenario, maybe people cannot always be the livelihood that makes them the happiest, but if it's the case that they stop killing one another and they start helping each other out a lot more often, in a lot more meaningful ways, I think that's an easy trade-off to be made. Before I go on, closing. Opening.
Yeah, isn't dependence on your side bad? Because the moment someone chooses to prioritize themselves over the community, they're automatically branded as the source of problems. So people might not kill each other between communities, but they will kill people within their own communities because they see us threatening the rest of that community.
So I don't think so, because I think people assume that there is an intrinsic love, but the threshold for hate is also not there, because it's unclear why just because someone is not in the livelihood I respect, I kill that person. In fact, it's just much easier for me to understand why someone ought not to belong in that identity, because the threshold is very clear. If you don't love and see this profession in the way in which I do, and make meaning out of it in the way in which I do, then it's free to live. The reason why people hold one another into religion and into race is because they don't understand why is it the case that people ought to stay with one another. Therefore, it's very easy to claim that anyone who opts out are a bad person. Let's do the final thing on the worst case analysis. Let's assume that people are locked into communities on both sides, because it's true that some people will be locked in. Why is the case of the comparative on outside is still better? But before I do that, is there anything for closing? Okay, I think the first thing I want to know is that the love for livelihood is somewhat intrinsically real, and this is something that we have actually proven. I've already given you clearly why it's the case that I love debate. I know Kevin Tay is an excellent debater, so this is my dare to him in closing. I dare you to prove why is it the case that you're proud being a man, being a Singaporean, being the things that we assign to you. If you fail to do these things, then it is clear, it's validative of the fact that I hold my love more apparently than you do, and therefore you want to live in a world where you can be debating all the time and be seen as a debater before you go back to NUS and have to deal with your GPA and then look for a job and then get called back to reservists and etc. The second is, I think, if capitalism exists and exists on both sides, they have to deal with when it hurts the most, because it exists where people forget that religion and race bond people together because it's an abstract construct. On outside the house, if it's the case you have to make a living, even if you hate it, you're able to derive meaning from it, because you see other people being extremely passionate, because you see other people trying to dissect and show you the beauty where you are not able to see it before. If you're bound to your livelihood the same way in which you can be bounded on your side, then it's likely to be the case on outside the house. You give you more support because you're among people who are more likely to help you and help you feel at peace with that common identity. On your side, who's going to help you feel more comfortable being Chinese? Who's going to help you feel more comfortable being a man or woman? That comparative does not exist.
Is this volume okay if I speak? Okay, if I speak like this, is it okay? Unfortunately for opening government, the livelihood we're talking about is not debating. The problem with basing collective identity on livelihood is that it is fatalistic. It says that your identity is meant to be a fisherman or a farmer, which locks people and communities into occupations for generations. This creates a permanent underclass of laborers who are lied to that this is their destiny and their role in society. I will first explain where communities get notions of collective identity from. Communities don't exist in a vacuum, they exist within a wider societal context and societal norms. For groups like immigrants, racial minorities, religious minorities, and gender minorities, society tells them that they're less intelligent and less competent. Society boxes them into occupations like being a factory worker, being a construction worker, or being a home caretaker, systemically denying them employment. And it leads to these groups having internal narratives about themselves. Their role in society is to be in the factories and to be in the farms. For the millions of immigrants that live in the West, they are lied to that their destiny in society is to work in the factories and work in the steel mills. For all of the women that live in the developing countries, these communities are told that their livelihoods are to be mothers and to be caretakers. The reason why this is so harmful is because in a capitalistic society, your livelihood affects the quality of life you will have for the short time you have on this earth. These jobs are physically exhausting and damage their bodies. Think of coal miners who get lung diseases. Think of construction workers that die young on construction sites or lose their limbs. But secondly, these jobs are just systemically low paying. Unions are constantly busted. Rich CEOs try to suppress wages. And this means that all of these low paying, low skill, manual labor jobs are easily replaceable and automated, which means that these communities, one, have no financial mobility to gain capital and get the life that they actually want. And secondly, they have no financial security that they can even continue their livelihoods. But lastly, these jobs just do not have access to levers of power. It will always be the dominant race whose livelihoods are being politicians and business owners. It will always be the white majority in the West whose livelihoods are to be politicians and to be CEOs, and then all of the immigrants that live in the West, livelihoods to be the people that work in the factories. Because history has dictated that when the British installed certain races in power, they say that those races are meant to be the ones that are meant to be politicians. All because dominant groups historically always had the cultural power to shape societal perceptions. Think of how the racial majority frequently portrays racial minorities as violent and dangerous. This means that the cultural power that the majority wields will be used in the most insidious way possible to make minorities think that they were born into a livelihood when they were meant to toil in the factories for the upper class. This means they will never enter the halls of influence. They are locked out of legislative chambers to give their own people citizenship. They are locked out of boardrooms where important decisions are made. They are locked out of places where they can make the lives of their community better. At this point in my speech, Gulf Bench's version of collective identity is a shackle on the agency of individuals. It shackles what they can aspire for their livelihoods and the things that they do on a daily basis for the 70 years that they have on their life. Your livelihood is something that you do 7 days a week for the rest of your life till you die. I think it's an insult for communities and for society to prescribe to you a kind of livelihood, to say that for the rest of your life you must work in an office or you must work in a factory. We all have different subjective preferences and what we want out of life. These are things that do not stem from our culture or our biology, they stem from our personhood. Some Singaporeans dream of being a politician, I dream of being a cloud drifting in the sky. The vast majority of people on this side live the biggest tragedy in this debate. They live a life never knowing themselves, because when they were born into this world, they were following a script written by unknown ancestors telling them that their livelihood was meant to be in a factory. The case from opening government is that there are other markers of identities that have baggages tied to them. The first response, and this builds our counterfactual, is that our identity is not built by a single trait. Opening government pushed the wrong burden. I do not have to stand here and justify why I'm proud of being a Singaporean or being a man. The reason is, the current way in which we conceptualize our identity is a complex combination of nationality, race, values, gender, and lived experiences and gender. If you are not nationalistic, naturally, other parts of your identity fill that gap and become a bigger part of your identity. There are many people who are not proud of being American, but are proud of their womanhood. There are many people that are not proud of being British, but are proud of their sexuality. And this means that there's room for negotiation. If you don't resonate very deeply with your race or your language that you speak, naturally identity formation happens on outside of the house where you can fill in with other components of your identity. This is exclusive to the opposition bench because their side has a singularity in the way in which people form their identity. It is one primary marker, one primary feature of your identity, which means that if you are not a fisherman or if you are not a factory worker, there is a huge amount of dissonance because there's no other livelihood prescribed to you that can fill that void when you don't feel as if you are a good fisherman because you get seasick on a boat. Optionality is greater on our side because unlike what opening government claims, you can't just switch careers. You need the educational qualifications. You need to get employment. But optionality is an internal process that's more accessible on our side. Before I move on, closing.
The determination of livelihood by race happens when race is primary. The complexity of multiple identities disrupts the ways that state redistribute, and that's why the world you envision is status quo.
My next part of the speech will directly respond to that POI in the likely closing extension. Society is constantly defining and redefining what it means to be a woman. Society is constantly redefining and defining what it means to be a Singaporean. Multiple definitions of womanhood can exist in society. Multiple definitions of what it means to be Singaporean can exist in society. There are different definitions of what it means to be nationalistic. The reason is simple. The reason is because these things are social constructs, which means that humans can define what it means, which means that the definitions can expand. In the past, maybe people talk of nurses when they talk of Filipinos, but when I think of Filipinos now, I think of some of the best debaters in Asia. On their side, they create path dependency, where your ways determine what livelihoods that you eventually go in. Livelihood is a practical consideration. A farmer works in the hot sun. A fisherman works in the sea. These are objective metrics. There is no room for the individual to decide what their identity means to them. And what makes it worse is that if you are bad at your livelihood, you are a fisherman who doesn't fish very well, you have no identity on their side. You are left confused permanently. But on our side, not only are there other aspects of your identity to fill, but there are ways for you to renegotiate the boundaries of your identity, to discuss with society and your community what it means to be a woman or what it means to be a Singaporean. So in the worst case that closing government wants to run, even then, we have ways to negotiate with society to redefine what it means to be a Singaporean or Filipino, because these are social constructs where we can impose our meaning. So when opening government says we are not Chinese or Vietnamese, I agree. But surely the answer isn't to take pride in being a corporate slave, a label created by capitalistic structures to create profits for the wealthy. At this point in my speech, you will believe identity formation is more possible on our side. Even if you believe our identity is imperfect, we prove that there's a possibility to redefine this. I will now explain why livelihood as identity is inescapable. That this produces an outcome where race is seen to be filling a role in society. Society is less accepting when you want to do things outside of your predefined role. Your community is not supportive. Your family does not want you to do anything other than what your grandparents did, which created massive societal coercion pressure to not do things outside of your livelihood. For all of these reasons, 谢谢大家。
A mixture of social traits does not mean that all identities are accessible. All societies will still require work. You need money. Someone needs to do the job that others do not want to do. And yet, even with the evolved, self-proclaimed lean-in feminism of opposition, a housewife is still not compensated, a Rust Belt worker is still denied union compensation, and a Filipino nurse still has to go to Canada. And yet they say they don't know what their identity is. They say they don't know what the better Filipinos are doing, like debating in an Asian final. I think that if you want individuals to feel meaning in the lives that they have in constrained agency, it is only to know that livelihood is tied with your contribution. That for worker reform to be recognized in society, it is in a collective contribution that you and other workers in society, in that collective constraint, produce for that same society. My argument today is very simple. All other collective identities interfere with the integral, meaningful due compensation of our work, and it is only our side that meaningfully protects that because they create those internal divisions. The label is going to be provided later because it's going to be nice. A few responses. Number one, how will this world be organized? Opening government assumes that you can choose your livelihood in our world, but they don't respond to OO's claim on you being locked into one livelihood forever or DLO's argument on the underclass of workers. And I will respond to it directly. Even if you are locked into one livelihood, why is this preferable? A. Other competing identities pressure you to feel unhappy in your current livelihood, even if you cannot change it as a consequence of identity-based discrimination. I will respond to the housewife example. If you are a housewife and you are pressured by the feminist movement to become a career worker, or even just feeling insecure as a consequence of other women being successful, and that the feminist movement always constantly says that we, as women, feel meaning in being able to pursue more and more careers, more and more corporate jobs, getting more and more wealth as a consequence of this, it says that the proof of their own mechanism of evolution within the feminist movement necessitates the disenfranchisement of many other lower class women within that same subclass of groups. So those fishermen, those individuals, those indigenous groups don't just get to automatically leave their village. What it means is that they still stay there and they still feel unhelped. They still feel that their contribution to society is much less. And that is how we impact BPM's argument. The second thing is this. The process of organizing around livelihood provides you with more skills and support systems for you to be able to deliver on your productive goods for society. Why is this important? Because your contribution to economic development, your child rearing for a village, is oftentimes denoted in opposition based on your identity or your nation, based on your race and the qualities of your race, but ours is based on the contributions that your livelihood does for society. And that is something that is tied with the union. What a union does is, even if you are all immigrants, even if you are all Rust Belt workers, you're not deserving of more compensation just because you are white. You are deserving of more compensation as a consequence of the fact that you work 9 to 5 every single day with every other single worker in this same factory. And that is what binds individuals across those identities, even if they're both in a situation of constrained agency. So again, their side doesn't mean that the immigrant workers in the Rust Belt suddenly get promoted. Oftentimes, the privileged white ones who are working in the factory are the ones that get promoted the most, and they're the ones that constrain their identity even more. So you divide on the basis of identity, and that's why our worst case is all good. So it also enables the organization of unions, social organizations, because they are more deserving, and the state interferes in this. The last reason is this. The most important people are those who simply can't opt out of their career and livelihood. Again, all the examples opposition says, as a consequence of the fact that the state endorses nationalism, the state endorses ethnic discrimination, that state legislates that, what we provide is the mechanism of meritocracy, or at least contribution of work, that you as a fisherman do provide trade goods for society, that it means that it has state subsidies, and that is where the meaningful difference is. The second thing I want to respond to is you can lean into different identities when it is necessary. This is often unsuccessful and disruptive because some collective identities force you to choose allegiance over others, and you are forced to align with that religion. Like religion over LGBT identity, like your gender identity being diluted as a consequence of this. So the opposition cannot say that they comparatively disenfranchise or be able to enfranchise all those LGBT individuals that are constrained by their religion. But what is the difference in our side? In our side, you will still work, and you will still be highlighted for non-immutable characteristics that you cannot control. But your meaning and your ability to contribute in your work, being a better, friar, or being a better McDonald's worker, even if that opposition says that it's not meaningful, for that individual, getting better in that job, having control over your ability to improve in that job, within that system, is meaningful. And that provides a dignity that otherwise society does not give them, and give that privilege for those individuals. So negotiation is much, much worse on their side. I'll go to the argument now. Yes.
If you are an American, you might want to benefit all Americans regardless of socio-economic class. But if your identity is built around being an accountant, why do you care about a factory worker?
No, you care about other accountants. Accountants discriminated by automation and all those other things show that you as an accountant work together with other accountants to try and protect against the disruptions against your industry. That is what people in ABS-CBN did. That is what people in many corporate jobs that otherwise would have been taken out of states also did in our side. Livelihood enables the direct cumulative distribution of property and wealth. Competing identities thus far undermine the redistribution of state power and property and wealth in the following key ways. Number one, historical disenfranchisement. The underlying moral claims towards state welfare have different bases. Like if property were based and allocated on religion, on nation, or race, it necessitates the capture of work from other individuals, like through slavery, or the concentration of wealth in monarchs and religious leaders. You extract wealth from others through the promotion of your own identity. Number two, even in modern states, you have to compete against other identity groups to disparage your special claim of identity groups based on your assumed worthiness over other individuals, like your historical disenfranchisement, like your obedience to God, like your race. So as a consequence, there are internal divisions across intersectional lines, which effectively, it crowds out other means to value your work, like the effectiveness of trade, like Chinese traders going to the Philippines were incapacitated because they were Chinese, which reinforces that state discrimination that is endorsed. But if Chinese traders went to the Philippines and they were endorsed for their work, they could also communicate meaningfully with other traders in the Philippines and be able to be promoted as a consequence of promoting those trade ties between those nations, and not be said that, oh no, they're just stealing from our jobs just because they are greedy, just because they are Chinese. As a consequence, those stereotypes mean, and it over-evolves across those intersectional lines and makes it easier on our side. Why then is livelihood more directly enabling? Number one, it is relatively easier to habituate into your work. That is meaning that OG says, but on our side we say that it includes specialization. It includes the meaningful contribution and the connection with that contribution and showing your growth to that same state. But the last reason is this: you find larger groups of individuals who you otherwise would not organize with, like the Chinese trader example, like the feminist example that I gave you earlier, like the accountant example that I gave in response as well. So organizing based on work is simply more accessible. For these reasons, closing government wins.
Let's go Tokyo! Let's go Tokyo!
Just a quick shout out to NASA for being an amazing teammate. I would also like to have a special shout out to Tomoyuki Suda, who is my high school teacher, for encouraging me to start debating quite a long time ago. I would like to thank my parents for supporting me through my debating career, my girlfriend for cheering me, and people in Japanese debating circuits for being kind enough to tolerate me throughout a couple of years. Thank you so much. Companies in Japan historically instilled employees with identity, collective identity of being part of that company. This breeds into the inefficiency of the system. The era of sunrise, where people collectivize on the basis of livelihood, where sunrise exploited farmers without innovation and any social change. The guild in medieval Europe, that was the basis of the collective identity, stopped further innovation from coming in. Luigi says disruption to the industry is bad, but disruption is the basis of innovation and social development. We, as the only EFL team in this final, will forward the most EFL extension in among 4 teams, which is that the innovation and advancement of capitalism wouldn't have happened, or at least significantly stifled down on the counterfactual. We explain why that is the most salient consideration in this debate. Given that this is the preverse of world motion, opening government as well as closing government cannot fiat that the world and the way that the society was constructed is in the exactly same way as it is today. We have to be very retrospective in how the world would have manifested on the counterfactual. Let's firstly briefly talk about closing government, because their extension is incredibly short-sighted. They say more redistribution, but more distribution of smaller pie. We will explain the entire pie of the economy expand 100,000 times. Even if the distribution process is not perfect and a bit discriminatory, at least the entire pie is bigger, therefore the benefits goes to the people on the ground far more on our side of the house. When fishermen collectivize and protect themselves, sure, as closing government says, it's better for fishermen themselves, but it harms the whole development of other professions in the entire society. So, let's talk about extension. Why do you think that the innovation of advancement and innovation as well as advancement of capitalism would have significantly stifled down on the counterfactual? There are 4 broad line of reasons as to why this is the case. The first is that for innovation to occur, you need collaboration between multiple different professions and multiple different industries. For instance, in the medieval times, you need blacksmiths to be able to help automate the process of farming to significantly increase the production processes. You need, for instance, like implementation of Discord into the debating community, significantly increase tournament efficiency, right? Like, these are things that you need on multiple different industries and multiple different
fresh perspective from different industry. You need the knowledge and technology from other industry to be able to further innovate on our side of the house. Why is it stifled under their side of the house? It is because guilds and when collective action, the primary collective action, is based on livelihood. You as a fisherman have an incentive to protect fishermen, but you, just like every identity that we have right now, the basis of why the collective identity is seen as important is, is also coming through through the emphasis on that you are superior, that you are, more than the other people who are working for other professions. So you will look down on them. You don't want to extend your courtesy that you do to fellow fishermen onto the other industry and other professions. That means that this collaboration would have significantly stifled down under the counterfactual. Secondly, innovation is a process of destruction and disruption of the traditional system. CG concedes to this when they say that disruption to the industry would no longer occur under their side of the house. Things like the invention of factory that replaced traditional jobs, things like the invention of ships that replaced horse riders in the medieval times, all of those were necessary inventions to increase the efficiency of the entire society. We would put to you, on their side of the house, this guild system based on livelihood is going to only care about the protection of their own individual members. So they don't want to innovate. They have every incentive to block innovation and not allow any structural changes and disruption, which would significantly stifle down under their side. Thirdly, note that capitalism craves efficiency. The implementation of capitalism was through a streamlining process where each individual worker were allocated to different type of job and tasks. The reason this is unlikely going to accrue under their side of the house historically is because in order for such an efficient system to occur, you need a hierarchy. You need a top-down structure of a person commanding what to do to the other individuals and dividing the labor in the most efficient manner. But these things wouldn't happen when the guild tells you everyone's equal. Like the best version of government case is that this identity is so great. Everyone in the community is equal. Everyone in the community is seen as a friends and extended courtesy. That means there is no incentive to exploit other people or to use them as a tool. Now, it sounds like a horrible thing, but throughout the course of history, it was the capitalism. It was the invention of more economic development that helped save millions of people out of poverty. That was the thing that is most important here. So maybe in the process, some people might get exploited, but we're happy to call out the harm because it would generate significantly greater economic benefits to the future generation. That is far more important. Fourth reason for this is that under the counterfactual, you are less likely going to have the system of meritocracy contrary to closing government assertion. The reason for this is that the community is based on livelihood is likely going to be more stratified throughout the course of history under their side. So this looks like, if you are a dad and you have a son, you're more likely going to want your son to also be a fisherman because your collective identity is being a fisherman. And what that entails, therefore, is that it's based on the family units, it's based on the blood, it's based on these factors that are also, by the way, inherent to who you are, by the way. So therefore, rich people or professions that earns a lot of money would obviously pass their professions to their own descendants and doesn't allow outsiders access. This is the basis of the collective action and your collective identity. By contrast, status quo is good. Like, we don't even have to agree why capitalism exists on the our side because this is the status quo. We know this has happened. So empirically it is true. But we will also point out, because identity is seen as an independent of profession, people don't really care about, identity, when you're working for a company, for instance. So therefore, more meritocracy would occur, more brutal system of disruption that breeds into more innovation will uniquely occur on our side. Go.
In DPM, we prove why we reduce conflicts so millions of people do not die. The mechanisms was independent of whether people feel at peace with their profession. How do you trade off genocide?
Okay, let's talk about this. So let's talk about the impact. The first thing to note here is that prior to advancement of capitalism, it was the era of feudalism where people starved much more. People suffered from famines and diseases. And the invention of medical technology saved millions of people. And capitalism has historically lifted millions of people out of poverty, even from developing countries. So that's a massive impact. The second impact is obviously capitalism was the biggest resistance to racism, sexism, and xenophobia, all the problems they identified. Because capitalism only cares about money and efficiency. It sees you as an individual worker of economic product. That means if you care about efficiency, you're more likely going to hire black workers, you're more likely going to hire people from minority backgrounds if it's cheap labor. That's far more inclusive. Finally, let's weigh this against opening heart. Opening heart clash on identity. Firstly, note that the economic development is logically prior to identity. First, the basis of accessing identity is economic development and innovation. Things like the invention of social media Tsuchiya allowed queer people to collectivize together that would have been otherwise a diaspora population without collectivization. Secondly, accessing multiple identity requires money. In order for you to find community in debating, you have to find multiple different tournaments. And in order to juggle multiple identities, which is the opening opposition argument, you need money to do this. All of these things are uniquely accessible in closing opposition. Very proud to stand on closing opposition.
This is my last Asian final. That's not anything. It's just literally because I'm capped out. And so I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone who has been with me. But I also want to take this opportunity to say that there is massive inequality all over the world. Continuously we see genocides, for example, the one that is happening in Gaza. We see ethnic cleansing, the ones that are happening in our home country, the Philippines, against indigenous groups themselves. We think that these are things that we should use our voice for. And I hope that, as I retire from debating, the young minds in these rooms are the ones who make the world better. It is unfortunate for closing opposition that the structure of the free market and the way that you innovate uniquely happens with specialization. Closing ops reasons for why you don't get economic efficiency are that you're not able to have a hierarchy and therefore subjugate people. I want to point out, A, economic efficiency would have happened in the alternative more at a point where specialization happens because in our world, one livelihood community is focused on it. They are able to circulate better information and therefore do not want to cut down on other individuals. CEO says you won't collaborate. I want to flag that's the world of status quo, where Americans have open seats on the basis of protecting their national interests don't want to collaborate. You tie your race to that form of innovation, and that's why even if they get that innovation, it is structured across racial lines. It's structured across gender and class lines. That means even if they get innovation, in status quo, it only benefits the people like the ones in this room who access academics. The difference is on a comparative. You don't feel threatened at CG because on our side, you and your communities, your villages, you want to improve your industry. You want to improve your livelihood at a point where they will always be intersectional and interconnected, because for you to be a fisher, you need to have someone manning the waters. That allows you to have that better incentive to create that capacity for economic efficiency. That's why it's better in the alternative world. But the Sacramento CEO says that they won't innovate for greater society because they don't care about others, and again, the hierarchy argument. A, I'm unsure why hierarchy is unique to other identities. I'm happy to concede that maybe you won't be perfectly equal as Luigi explains. The extension Luigi explained was that why at different levels of hierarchy, that is a better structure of accommodation and collectivization. Uniquely because unlike things like gender, like identity, you have to come together to understand ideology. You have to know what Judith Butler says about gender as opposed to it being proximate to you right now. That you are hungry and that's why you fish. Those things are easier for you to come together and therefore collectivize. Maybe in our worst case, you won't innovate purely for the rest of the world, but you individually not only are happier, which is a better structure and mechanism than opening government, but you also improve society as a whole at a point where you improve it. So that is a trade-off against closing opposition. But honestly, even if you aren't the fastest in the forms of efficiency, sure, opening up.
Given that livelihoods affect us in society so much, won't there always be a practical-based incentive to unionize and collaborate, even if it's not an identity-based incentive?
Scale. Yes, because on our side, that incentive is larger. On your side, you don't do that because you cut people based on gender. Women now are not able to unionize with male workers, and that's why it's a lot harder, especially because even if you redefine social norms, it's a lot harder. There is greater forms of social capital you need. The final thing I want to make a trade-off for is it's okay for you to trade off the fastest forms of efficiency. As we explained at Luigi, the most crucial thing is due compensation, because individuals will have to work regardless. The difference is that even if it's imperfect in the worst version of our world where you aren't able to get that due compensation, the difference is that individuals find that it is something that is meaningful. They know it is something that's important. Opening up makes a massive concession. You will have to work regardless because you operate in a capitalist system. They don't give you one out because these complex identities, they never prove to be accessible on the other side. At least at closing government, we say you can take pride in that. Maybe it's not a perfect meritocracy, but you believing in a system is a
prerequisite for you to feel happy, for you to find meaning. Maybe you'll never be able to immigrate to Singapore. Maybe you will never be able to have a better master's degree. But at the very least, that gives you comfort as opposed to always instructing you, forcing you to be a refugee of identity as opening up concedes. You constantly have to find which identity fits you, and that is an inherent injustice to your identity at a point where you cannot do that. Why does opening up not win? Up cannot guarantee that the state will promote all collective identities. Their claim is that it's going to be accessible because it's complex. I want to flag A, identities based on ideology like religion want to expand, which is why they commit indoctrination and states commit violence. It's not easy to move to different identities, especially because they want to kill you. Open and Gov only says genocide. That genocide will likely exist regardless of identity. We give the mechanism for why ideologically those identities are harmful and therefore expansionary, and that's why you can't opt into it. That social programming precedes the assumption coming from DLO that you have social norms you can change, because you cannot change social norms if these things come from your parents, if these things come from your communities. Those things are for harder for you to operate under. But secondly, even in the power to renegotiate, it is only in the hands of the rich who have social capital. You make identity divisive, which means the meaning and identity you get from opening up doesn't feel fulfilling. In the comparative, maybe you don't have choice. We're perfectly fine to concede that at closing off. But the difference is that those communities give you more meaning because those, again, are more proximate to you, feel more important. Comparatively, the alternative world, as Luigi explains, gives you more information based on your job. Finally, O says you will want to support other people in your nation. This is A, broken by the response to CO as well, but secondly, by the response to division I just gave. Even if you support them, you still feel socially distant because of the reasons I said that it is less proximate. These are people you don't meet in your daily life or your 9-to-5 job, and that's why it's far harder. But even if that's not the case, I want to flag that opening up relies on status quo being already diverse by saying it's more normalized. A, in POI, I point out that you already are unable to opt out of work. That's why opening half is out of this debate. Because this isn't about you being able to opt out of things. There's going to be social narratives and the lack of consent on either side anyway. But uniquely in opening ops world, as LO concedes, your typecast is being better at housework because you're a woman. Whenever you will still make that decision based on that identity, it's far worse. The best response they launch is, well, you will still have women identities on CG. Yes, but they are far weaker. They are secondary to things like merit that you opt to believe in because that is how you operate in society. I want to note that a trust in society, a trust in structure, is a prerequisite for operating in it at all. That is prior to anything from the rest of the debate, because individuals are unlikely to operate and engage in society at a point where they feel like it is unimportant. What Luigi explains is, on OO, they still lock you in livelihoods when the intersections of identity still determine your life. We agree you may not have perfect choice as open at Gov. The difference is we explain why it is better and therefore more meaningful. In the worst case, you're locked out of other work, so you don't get the comfort of expressing other aspects. We explain why suppression doesn't stop and why it's probably better. Against opening Gov, their best claim was at DPM, who says, well, at least you get meaning. The only thing they say is that you get support structures from it. Luigi encapsulates the reasons behind it, but more crucially, again, they rely on divisiveness not happening at Gov. That weakens their own argument because if these individuals aren't able to have communal structures as well in opening government, they don't have any alternative ways of being able to support them. That means that their argument is self-defeating. Luigi explains a more certain benefit of being able to get that negotiation, but more crucially, what is most important to people is the ability to believe in themselves.
Let's go Tokyo! Let's go Tokyo!
Hi, before I start my speech, just a few shout-outs. Shout-outs to Kotaro, who I guess everyone knows is extremely intelligent, amazing. He's also extremely hardworking, a great person. We should love him. And another shout-out to the Japanese debating community. Thank you for supporting us, as well as Japan, Greater Northeast Asia, and the EFL community as a whole. Just know that we deserve better. We should not be the only EFL team in the final. And we deserve to know that we deserve better. Have confidence. Don't be humble. Don't be the Northeast Asian stereotype. We will advance further. A creation of identity requires the congregation of individuals
the existence of social networks and people, the protection of human lives and livelihood. CO is the team that proves the fundamental basis of livelihood, of basic human civilization. That is why we clearly take this debate on our Senate House. The structural changes that we prove to you will not happen within economies within thousands of years ago is the basis of human civilization that allows us to debate in this room, to have medicine, to be able to eat on a daily basis. Obviously, we should care about this. We win the debate. Firstly, opening half is inherently incomparative, is significantly marginal. Notice that both OG and OO point to reasons why community and identity are inherently binding because of things like incentives and structures to enforce this, or because of things like internal and external pressures that pushes you into this identity. Considering that these are both symmetrical on either side of the house, it's significantly unclear to me to what extent this changes. Therefore, the more important imperative in this debate is debate on what kind of identity formation is going to change the structural society on our Senate House. That is why it is extremely important when we point out to you, when this is formed around economies, and if this is formed around things like guilt, that is when you stop things like innovation from happening in the first place. I know that we aren't giving the fancy illustrations as to why our impact is important, but it's extremely clear and intuitive. Obviously, innovation is important. Obviously, medical supplies is important. Obviously, food is important for human survival. That is why we win this debate. Let's respond to the closing government responses to our case, which are extremely minimal. The first thing that they say is that specialization only happens outside of government. I don't understand why. Obviously, specialization happens on our side of the house when you have things like congregation of individuals trying to work out things together, when you have things like innovation and you try to do that, you have things like companies that kind of do this. Obviously, this happens on either side of the house. It's extremely unclear to me why this is true. The second response that they give is that because you cannot cross-collaborate between different nations, this limits innovation. In comparison, this lack of collaboration is significantly smaller in comparison to the lack of collaboration that happens on our Senate House. The collaboration between the US and Japan happened in the 2000s or the 1950s. We're talking about the 1300s when you weren't able to get collaboration between different sects and different innovations. That is why this is obviously different in the first place. But technically, even absent this kind of collaboration between different nations, this economic development happened between different countries and nations and regions around the world. It is really intuitive to believe closing government's case at the end of the day. Let's respond quickly to closing government and take them out of the debate before we move on. I think their case is one that you're going to have binding groups, individuals that can unionize together, and that's good. Notice that the best extent of their case is to say that McDonald's workers can now unionize and fight against a union of CEOs. They give zero mechanism to prove why this kind of fighting is going to be effective or going to work. It is unclear to me why they can win the debate at all. But secondly, their case feeds exactly into ours. If it is true that these have massive amounts of congregation power, massive amounts of to stop things like innovation, this feeds in directly into our case to prove to you why this prevents things like innovation. This disruption may be bad in the short term, but we already weighed to you why it is extremely important in the long term for the preservation of human society as a whole. The second main case they give is that you find meaning in your job, which is derivative of opening government, so we'll respond later. Let's weigh our extension against opening opposition. Notice that opening opposition's case on agency, necessarily they talk about a lot of why a lack of agency is bad, and it is proven, I agree, but they struggle to defend the comparative in mainly a few ways. The first thing is that they talk about, in their case, as to how other identity markers are used to lock people into these societal structures anyway. I think this deletes their case because this type of thing is going to happen on either side of the house. Secondly, societal structures uniquely lock people into specific jobs anyway. The fact that you can't access things like education, the fact that you access things like geographical things in the first place. If their best impact is that people can choose jobs, this only applies to the privileged few of every society who have the liberation to go to university wherever they want, to have the choice to choose whatever job they want to, which is not afforded to the most vulnerable in the society to begin with. And therefore, their argument is inherently privileged. It is unimportant in comparison to ours that protects the most vulnerable, everyone, because everyone deserves food, everyone deserves medicine. But thirdly, notice that the only defense of their comparative is Singapore, which might be the only country in the entire world which has succeeded in multiculturalism to some extent. Their case is vulnerable to the response that identity formation around things like nations is inherently exclusive and inherently difficult to opt out of in the first place. Therefore, their case on you can negotiate these societal structures and they change over time is iffy because we have already known from proven status quo that this type of thing has not happened, and many people are still locked into this in the first place. So on mechanism, their case is marginal, our case is massive. But secondly, on impact weighting, obviously this is better on our Senate House. Maybe a bit more people can feel at home choosing this kind of job. Maybe a few more people have a sense of agency. This is in comparison far less important to our impact when we protect massive amounts of people and lives on the ground. Or because the fact that the
the agency in and of itself is rooted in the fact that you have choices, and these choices were massively expanded on our said house because of this innovation. You can now choose to be an AI researcher, which probably wouldn't have happened on their said house. We expand choices, which is the prerequisite for the agency argument at the get-go. Before I move on, I'll take opening.
The identity in your livelihood is strong because it is singular and reinforced every day, unlocking our benefit of peace and mutual support. On your side, what even makes up people? Ambiguity is not a very good.
Okay, I'll respond to that. Firstly, let's respond to opening government. The first thing that I want to respond to is this idea that you can find meaning in life, which is echoed by OG and then by CG. The first thing is that I think this is unintuitive, considering the fact that a lot of people already find meaning in their jobs anyway, because it is extremely intuitive and accessible to begin with. If you like doing debating, you enjoy it on either side of the house, it's extremely unclear to me why this is marginal at the end of the day. But secondly, this is significantly worsened on their side of the house, because if you continue to find meaning in a work that is deteriorating over time, if you continue to find meaning in a work that you are horrible at, these things lock you out of any meaning on their side of the house. It is significantly unclear to me why they can win the day at the end of the day. But thirdly, again, meaning is situated on the fact that you have a sense of livelihood, that you have protection. If you are inherently scared of losing your life every day, there is no sense of meaning for every individual in our said house. So in comparison way, this does not win the day at the end of the day. The second main argument that they have is on genocide and killing. It is inherently insanely incomparative. An identity formation around jobs and professions forms the same kind of genocide and hatred anyway. The Buraku people, who are the butchers in Japan, the samurais that have fed on the exploitation of the people on the ground, all of this has led to massive amounts of genocide and killing on either side of the house. Sadly, they cannot win this debate here. But lastly, we flip this because again, when you allow these people to have economic capacity and capitalism, this is when you evaluate them on the basis of things like economic production. That is why we create these individuals and a leeway to get out that you do not get on their side house, right? And lastly, they say that societal traits are binding and limits agency. Without, again, I think this is proven by opening opposition as well, that these kind of choices do not exist on either side of the house. It is significantly unclear to me why this is better for individuals. What we have proven comprehensively is that we protect the livelihoods of the millions of people on the ground. Obviously, we take this debate.
Hello everyone. First of all, thank you to all the speakers for their insightful and engaging speeches. Lunch is now ready, so feel free to help yourselves. The awarding ceremony for Krabi ABP 2024 will begin shortly. Thank you everyone.
Right. Take the stairs down, third floor. There's a restaurant that we entered down. Okay. I think we will be bringing a lunch snack for everybody.
Oh, okay, slide. Okay, thanks, Jerry.